In this course, you'll discover the basics of Microsoft Excel, what it is, how to use it, and why it's an important part of Microsoft's suite of office productivity tools. This course will help you get started with the basic features and functionality in Microsoft Excel. And by the end of the course, you'll be familiar with how to complete a range of complex tasks using the application. Did you know that Microsoft Excel boasts a vast array of sophisticated spreadsheet editing tools that can help speed up your workflow? For the rest of Module 1, you'll get started with some entry-level basics in Microsoft Excel. By getting to know Excel, what it does, its interface, and general layout and features, you'll get to start creating workbooks and working with data, before exploring how to modify workbooks, formatting data, applying layout, and preparing to print. In Module 2, you'll start working with Excel's core features, functions, and formulas. You'll learn how to implement and use formulas and functions with data in Excel. You'll also learn how to use sorting and filtering tools and define data sets by applying range names. And you'll explore an array of specialized text and logical functions that can really boost your abilities in Excel. In Module 3, you'll move on to how to organize and visualize data in Excel. You'll learn all about tables and charts, how to create, format, and modify them to store, organize, and display data in the way that you need. You'll also learn how to manage large workbooks, and you'll be introduced to analyzing data using Excel's pivot tables and sparklines. In Module 4, you'll have the opportunity to try out some of the advanced features that Excel has to offer. These include customizing formula, proofing, and interface options, as well as applying conditional formatting, how to customize, manage, enhance, and automate large workbooks, and how to export data and use data sources. Finally, in Module 5, you'll undertake a hands-on project with Microsoft Excel. In this project, you'll use the knowledge and experience that you've gained from the previous modules by applying your spreadsheet skills to analyze and present sales data before reviewing and leaving comments. Throughout all these modules, you'll encounter several case studies showing the real-world applications of Microsoft Excel. And by the time you've completed this project and the other exercises in the course, you'll have created a portfolio of work demonstrating your proficiency with Microsoft Excel. By the end of this course, you will have learned how to get started with Excel, work with formulas and functions, modify worksheets, print workbook contents and manage workbooks, analyze data using functions, and visualize data with charts. Best of luck on your journey through Microsoft Excel.
Welcome. Whether you're interested in learning how to use some of the essential Microsoft 365 Office applications or preparing to earn a certification, this program covers what you'll need to achieve your goals. You'll have access to a range of resources designed to support your learning journey. Before you begin, we recommend that you are comfortable with the basics of how to use and navigate a Windows operating system, familiar with how to use a mouse, keyboard, and start menu, and, if possible, experienced with operating both an internet browser and a printer system. So, if you're good to go, it's time to look at the content you will be able to access in this program. In each lesson, you have access to videos, readings, exercises, discussion prompts, practice quizzes, and graded quizzes. The videos guide you on the key features, elements, and the best practices associated with individual Microsoft Office programs. There are also several optional videos. These are not mandatory and can be skipped if you are already familiar with the material they cover. Next are the readings and exercises. Readings are articles that provide a more in-depth look at the topics you cover in the videos. They can also be an item of information in themselves. Exercises are articles that provide step-by-step instructions for performing tasks that you encounter in videos. To complete an exercise, you'll need to open the Microsoft Office program and perform the steps as outlined in the article. Each exercise guides the requirements. You can pass this course and all graded assessments without access to the downloadable version of a particular Microsoft program, and you are free to use Office for the web or another version of a Microsoft Office application. You should note that some features covered in the exercises may not be available when you use another version. As you navigate this program, remember, you're not alone on your journey. Through discussion prompts, you are encouraged to actively engage with classmates on the core topics covered in each module. Take the opportunity to be inspired or to inspire others. Each lesson also has a practice quiz. A practice quiz is a series of short questions that assess your knowledge of the topics you've covered in the lesson. At the end of each module, there is also a graded quiz. A graded quiz is more like an exam. There are more questions in this graded quiz than in your practice quiz, and your answers, in this case, do receive a grade. After you finish and submit a quiz, you'll see your score. For some quizzes, you might also see feedback, like hints or explanations for each question. All quizzes include multiple question types. You can retake quizzes if you need to improve a score or if you did not pass the first time. When you complete a course, you'll earn a certificate that you can share with prospective employers and your professional network. In the final module of each course, you'll also have the option to complete the honours material. This is an optional honours assignment you can complete for special recognition. In these assignments, you'll have to draw upon the knowledge that you have gained throughout a course and put it into practice by applying your new skills to an assignment. You don't need to complete the assignment to get a course certificate, but if you complete the honours assignment, your course certificate will include a special honours recognition. You're now ready to navigate your way through these courses and start building your skills with Microsoft 365. Have fun learning.
So what exactly is Excel? Well, Microsoft Excel is a powerful and easy-to-use spreadsheet application. Nearly everyone who works with numbers has likely used Excel or some other spreadsheet application in one form or another. Thomas Bradshaw from Westcal Publishing knows he has to start using Excel to be able to perform the role of an account manager, but it's been a long time since he used these applications. If you are new to Excel and spreadsheets in general like Thomas, the vast array of features and controls can seem quite daunting. However, once you understand the basics of workbooks and the functionality they offer, you'll be well on your way to becoming an expert in Excel. So let's not waste any more time in getting started with Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel is the spreadsheet application that is part of Microsoft's suite of office productivity tools. Spreadsheets are essentially a large flexible grid which can be paper or digital that are used to store, sort and work with information, typically numerical data. In Excel, data is stored in a worksheet, a digital form of spreadsheet, which consists of intersecting rows and columns. A column is a vertical series of adjacent cells from top to bottom. A row is a horizontal series of cells from left to right. The intersection of a row and column is called a cell and can contain many types of data. This data, while most often numerical, can also include text, shapes and pictures. Using Excel, you can organize, analyze and store large amounts of data. You can also create charts, tables and diagrams to summarize and present data. Typically, worksheets display columns with alphabetical headers and rows with numerical ones. Each column has an index letter. Since there are only 26 letters, and there can be far more than 26 columns on a spreadsheet, the columns after column Z are indexed by the letters AA, AB, AC and so on until the last column, up to XFD more than 16,000. Each row has an index number from 1 through to 1,048,576. Each cell is given a name in the column row format, with the top left cells referenced as A1. Here you can see that the word cell has been typed into C3. The active cell is the name given to the cell that is currently selected. A cell range, or simply range, is defined as a series or block of adjacent cells. A workbook is a collection of one or more worksheets. By default, new blank workbooks only include one worksheet, but you can add others if needed. If the workbook that you are using includes more than one worksheet, you can switch between them by clicking the tabs. The name of the worksheet that you are presently working with will be in bold type on a white background. Let's take a closer look at Excel's user interface and how to interact with the features and functionality contained in the layout. The Quick Access toolbar gives you quick access to frequently used commands. This toolbar is completely customizable and can be positioned above or below the ribbon commands. Tabs are groups of similar commands and are organized under tab names. Click a tab to view the commands in the ribbon. The ribbon interface displays tab commands organized into groups. If you click the different tabs, you will see the commands change. Notice that some of the commands might be grayed out. This is because those commands are only usable in certain situations. The File tab, which opens Backstage View, is also included here. Every cell has a name in the format column row. The name of the currently selected cell, called the active cell, is shown in the name box. Here, the active cell is A1. The formula bar allows you to enter data in a cell. Data can be alphanumeric, pictures, symbols, or as the name suggests, formulae. The data contained in the file will be shown in the working area. The contents of this cell are shown in the formula bar. When you're doing calculations, the result is shown in the worksheet, but the calculation is visible in the formula bar. The status bar is used to display information about the workbook. Any temporary results, depending on what is selected in the worksheet, will be shown here. There are also some zoom and view commands here. As you grow more accustomed to working with Excel, you may begin to work on larger files, and sometimes all of the information in a worksheet will not fit on the screen. You will find scroll bars on the right and bottom sides of Excel workbooks. To view different parts of a worksheet, click and drag the scroll bars to scroll horizontally or vertically through the data. Sometimes the keyboard can be an even quicker way to navigate through worksheets. On screen now are some common keyboard shortcuts that you may find useful. For a full list of keyboard shortcuts, please refer to the additional resources at the end of this lesson. Now let's take a closer look at the Excel user interface as you learn how to create and manage your own workbooks. Excel's ribbon interface is a great place to start, as it contains a huge amount of Excel's features and functionality. Excel's commands are found on the ribbon and split into groups. Each group is identified with a name, and the active tab is underlined to differentiate it from the others. By default, Microsoft Excel has 8 tabs, excluding the File menu. Those tabs are Home. Here you perform basic formatting and editing tasks. Insert enables you to add objects and filters to the workbook. Page Layout. Here you can change the overall appearance of the workbook. Formulas. Find, insert and manage formulas and functions in your workbook. Data enables you to manage and organize the data within your workbook. Review allows you to check your workbook for spelling errors, add comments, and manage how changes are handled. View, here you can change how you're viewing your workbook and work with macros. And Help, where you can access Microsoft's built-in help features. Excel also features contextual tabs. These are special tabs that only appear when you are working with a specific object or group of information. For example, if you select a table, the Table Design contextual tab will be shown. Some groups feature an option button beside the group name. Click the Dialog Box Launcher button to open a dialog box with more specific controls relating to this group and other commands in the tab. The Backstage view is where you have some general options and controls for the Excel application. The File tab opens a special screen called Backstage View. Let's take a quick look at each item on the left-hand side. New is where you can create a new blank workbook or choose from a number of available templates. Open a workbook from your OneDrive account, your computer, or any other location that you have access to. Info displays vital statistics about the current file. You're also able to modify read-write permissions, check for compatibility issues with other programs, manage versions of this file, and choose what users see if the current workbook is viewed on the web. Document properties are listed on the far right side. Save your workbook to update the current workbook with any changes made since it was last saved. If the file has not been saved, clicking this command will switch you to the Save As category. Save As enables you to choose whether to save the workbook to your OneDrive account, your computer, or any other location that you have access to, and choose from many available file types. Print is where you can preview and browse your workbook as it would look if it were printed. This is called Print Preview. It also provides commands to print the workbook and customize the printout. Share this workbook to the cloud or send this workbook to others via email. Export lets you save the workbook as a PDF or XPS file. It also provides a command to change the file type, which gives you access to many different formats. Publish your workbook to Power BI, an online data analysis service. Close the current workbook. Account enables you to modify your Microsoft account. Feedback is where you can provide feedback to Microsoft on features you like or dislike and submit suggestions for future versions of Excel. And Options lets you open the Excel Options dialog box, where you can change the general settings of your Excel application. To close Backstage View, click the back arrow at the top of the menu. Excel offers support for a variety of data types that can be entered into worksheets. These include labels, which can be any alphanumeric text, values, which are numbers that you can use to perform functions and data analysis, dates and times, which express the date, the time, or both, Using the correct data type will facilitate data analysis and ensure that you can use appropriate features like pivot tables and what-if analysis. Microsoft Excel uses a file format known as the Microsoft Excel XML format. Despite this newer file format, Excel 365 is capable of reading files created from Excel 97 through to Excel 2016 and beyond. It is also capable of using other file types as well, including plain text, OpenOffice.org documents, and data output files. Whenever you save a new file in Excel, it is automatically saved in the Excel 365 file format. However, you can use the Save As command to open the related dialog box and choose a file type. This can be helpful if you're worried about compatibility with earlier versions of Microsoft Office. Click File, then Save As, or press F12 to open this dialog box. When working with files in Excel, there will be two save scenarios. You'll either save a new file that was made from scratch, or you'll save changes to an existing file. Therefore, there are two different save commands in Excel, Save and Save As. Let's have a look at the actions of each command on either a new file or an existing file. When saving a new file, clicking either Save or Save As will have the same result. You'll be prompted to give the file a name and choose a save location. You can also specify a file type. When saving an existing file and clicking Save, any changes you have made will be applied to the existing file in its current location. When saving an existing file and clicking Save As, you have the option to give the file a new name and a new save location. You can also specify a new file type. If you do change something, the original file will not be changed. To save a new file for the first time, you can click the Save icon on the Quick Access toolbar, press Ctrl and S together, click File and then Save, or click File and then Save As. Any of these options will open the Save As category of Backstage View. On the left-hand side, choose the location to which you want to save or click Browse to manually choose a location. Clicking Browse will open the traditional Save As dialog box. At the top of the window, you can choose a location to save your file. You can also use the shortcuts on the left-hand side of the window to navigate through your computer. At the bottom of the window, enter a file name. Finally, choose a file type if desired. Click Save to complete the process. Once you have saved a file in this way, you can use the commands mentioned previously, Save icon on the Quick Access toolbar, Ctrl and S keys, or File and then Save to update it. Because you are updating an existing file, you will not need to enter the file name, location, or type again. If you want to save the file with a different name, location, or type, click File and then Save As, or use the F12 shortcut. This will reopen the Save As dialog box and let you change file information. Microsoft OneDrive is Microsoft's online file storage service. It is available to anyone with a Microsoft account and allows users to store, sync, and share files with other users online. You can access these files using your browser or through your operating system if you use Windows 8 or later. Microsoft 365 incorporates OneDrive directly into most of its apps so that you can seamlessly save and open files to your OneDrive account. For example, in the Save As category of Backstage View, you have quick access to your OneDrive account if you are signed in with a Microsoft account. To save the current workbook to your OneDrive account, click the OneDrive entry on the left-hand side of the Save As category. Then choose the desired folder within the OneDrive account from the list on the right-hand side. When working with a workbook in Excel 365 that was created in an older version of Excel, such as Excel 2003, that workbook will automatically open in compatibility mode. Such workbooks can easily be identified by the compatibility mode text next to the file name on the title bar. A workbook that was created using an older version of Excel can be opened in Excel 365 using compatibility mode. However, some newer features may be limited. To access these features, you can convert older workbooks into Excel 365 file format. Additionally, you will often find that converting older workbooks into this newer format will help reduce its size. To convert an open workbook, click File, then Info, and then Convert. This will open a Save As dialog box where you can save a version of the workbook in the Excel 365 format. Clicking Save will mean that you are now working within the converted workbook. The compatibility checker is designed to scan your workbook for potential issues if you want to save it as an earlier version of Excel, particularly using .xls format. Open this tool by clicking File, then Info, and then check for issues, and finally check compatibility. After a moment, the compatibility checker dialog box will appear and show all possible conflicts between Excel 365 and previous versions. Click OK to close the dialog box. Note the available option at the bottom of the compatibility checker dialog box to automatically check compatibility when saving this workbook. Microsoft Excel also comes with a tool to help you check your document for possible accessibility issues that could affect users with disabilities. To use this tool, click File, then Info, and then Check for Issues, and finally Check Accessibility. The Accessibility task pane will then be displayed on the right-hand side of your screen. Its contents will be divided into 3 sections: Errors, Warnings, and Tips. You can click on any issues to go to that item and view more information about the problem. Let's take a closer look at the 3 types of inspection results. The Errors section will list items in the workbook that people with disabilities will not be able to access. This includes objects without alternate text, tables that do not have header rows, and manual formatting. Alternative text is a sentence that describes an image you've inserted in a spreadsheet that helps visually impaired users. The Warnings section lists issues such as hard-to-read color combinations for the visually impaired, awkward table formatting, and hyperlinks that do not have screen tips. You can click on an entry in this list to see suggested ways to fix the problem. Clicking also takes you directly to the item. And finally, the Tips section of the Accessibility Checker will give you additional information for ways that you can improve the accessibility of your workbook even further. It would be difficult to memorize everything Excel offers, and its features are constantly changing. Luckily, Excel comes with a few different help tools so that you can find answers to any questions. If you're not sure how to do something in Excel, or you're looking for a command or a suggestion, you can click the search box in the title bar of your workbook and type a word or phrase related to what you want to do. As you type, the search feature will present different options and recommendations related to the topic you have entered. Depending on the topic you have entered, the options and recommendations can include the best available action, alternative actions, searching the workbook for the term, opening the Microsoft Help task pane, or a link to a definition of the term. To access advanced help options, click the Help tab in the ribbon. The Help tab contains 2 groups, the Help group and the Community group. Clicking the Help command in the Help group will launch the Help task pane to the right of your worksheet. Typing a question or a phrase in the search field will present one or more help topics that present you with a possible solution. Clicking on one of the options will display the selected solution, as well as the other most relevant results of your search. You can also click Show More to display other less relevant results. Here's a quick overview of the other commands in the Help group and Community group and the resources they provide. The Contact Support command will launch the Help task pane and provide information on how to access support based on your type of software license. The Feedback command will launch the Feedback task pane and present you with options to submit feedback to Microsoft. The Show Training command will launch the Help task pane and present options for built-in Microsoft Excel training. The What's New command will launch the What's New task pane and display information on new features in the Excel application. The Community command will launch a browser window and open the Microsoft Excel Community homepage, which gives access to a wealth of information created by a user community. The Excel Blog command will launch a browser window and open the Microsoft Blog homepage, where you access a wide array of Excel-related user-generated posts. And the Suggest a Feature command will launch the Suggest a Feature task pane, where you can submit suggestions and ideas for the next version of Excel. Working with data is the fundamental purpose of Excel, so let's get started with data. Thomas Bradshaw from Westcal Publishing knows that Excel contains several tools to help reduce your workload and streamline tasks. Let's explore a few tools and techniques that you can use when working with formulas and data. Let's begin with some of the more common techniques that you can use to select various parts of a worksheet. To select a cell, simply click on the cell. To select a contiguous range of cells, click the first cell included in the range, hold down the Shift key, and then click on the last cell in the range. To select an entire row, click on the numerical header. To select an entire column, click on the alphabetic header. To select an entire worksheet, click the worksheet selector next to column A or press Ctrl and A on your keyboard. And to select a contiguous range of cells, rows, or columns, click and hold the left mouse button over the first cell, column, or row in the range, then drag the mouse to the last cell, column, or row, then release the left mouse button. Just like many applications, Excel allows you to move and/or copy cells and their contents to other areas of the workbook or even other applications. You can move a cell's contents using the cut and paste commands. You can find these commands in the Clipboard group of the Home tab. These commands are also available on the right-click menu. Or you can use keyboard shortcuts for these commands. To cut, you want to press Ctrl and X. To copy, it's Ctrl and C. And to paste, you press Ctrl and V. These shortcuts are universal across most programs. To use the range of paste options, click the drop-down on the Paste command in the Home tab to access the many options on how to paste data and/or attributes from your copied data. The standard paste option at the top left is used to paste all formatting, along with the contents of the cell. The Paste Values option is used to paste the values from the copied data only, without the formulas or formatting. To review the alternate paste methods, you can hover your mouse over the icons to display a description or click Paste Special. The Paste Special dialog box will appear, displaying the available options for pasting copied data. Live Preview is used to give you an idea of how copied objects will look when pasted in a selected area using regular paste or a Paste Special option. These previews are enabled by default and will be displayed automatically when you hover your cursor over a paste option on the Paste drop-down command or on the context menu. A preview of how the data will look when pasted will be displayed, and any overlaying menus will become transparent. You'll also find this feature when formatting your worksheets by changing fonts and adding styles. The transpose option is a type of paste command that includes options to shift the vertical and horizontal orientation of any columns and rows in a worksheet. For example, suppose that you had a data range that displayed product names and numbers as rows, with days of the week displayed as columns. You could transpose the columns and rows by copying this data range and then placing your cursor on the worksheet where you want the copied data to be pasted. Next, click Home, then Paste, and then Transpose. The result will flip the row and columns. You can also move Excel data by selecting cells and dragging and dropping them to a new location. To do this, hover your mouse over the border of the selected cells until the Move cursor appears. Then click and drag the selected cells to the new location. Excel has a couple of useful features which can automatically repeat, sequence, combine or extract data across many cells if it recognizes a pattern. Autofill can help you quickly enter repeated or incremental text and numbers. For example, imagine that you must enter all the years from 2010 to 2020 in a worksheet. Rather than typing each year manually, you can use autofill to enter the data quickly and easily. In order to use autofill, you need to establish a pattern if you want anything other than default. Firstly, type 2010 into cell A1 and 2011 into cell A2, drag and select both cells and hover over the green box in the corner. Now drag downwards and let go of the mouse. The corresponding years autofill as a result. You can click the Autofill Options button that appears after you have selected a range of cells to configure how the autofill works. Excel also comes pre-programmed with some other common autofill sequences, including days of the week and months of the year. Let's try another method. Type 2010 into cell A1 and 2012 in cell A3. Then select the range of cells from A1 to A3. Next, navigate to the Home tab and click the Autofill icon, and then select Series from the drop-down menu. A Series dialog box will open containing options for configuring how you want the series autofill to operate. Excel will automatically choose options related to the range of cells you selected. Here the series will be in a column in a linear type with a step value of 1. Click OK. Now cell A2 will be populated with the missing year in the sequence. Flash fill is similar to autofill, but flash fill will automatically extract or combine data when it senses a pattern in the adjacent cells. As an example, you can use flash fill to separate the first name from a column containing full names. Start by typing the first name from cell A2 into cell B2. You can then select cell B3 and click Data, then Flash Fill. Sensing a pattern, Excel will automatically fill the remaining cells in column B with the first name from column A. Like many other applications, the Undo command allows you to reverse the last action that you completed. The Redo command, on the other hand, will repeat the last action. Both commands are available in the Quick Access toolbar. Clicking the drop-down arrow on either command will allow you to select multiple actions at once from your recent activity. You can also perform the Undo command by pressing Ctrl and Z on your keyboard. The shortcut for the Redo command is Ctrl and Y. The next level of working with data in Excel is modifying entire rows and columns. Excel provides plenty of features for controlling and editing rows and columns in a worksheet. Let's take a look at some of the functionality available. To insert a new column, click on a cell in the column to the right of where you want the new column to appear. Or to insert a new row, click on a cell in the row below where you want the new one to appear. Next, click Home, then Insert and choose what to insert. Notice that you can also insert individual cells from this menu. You can also access these options by right-clicking on the chosen cell and selecting Insert from the menu. The Insert dialog box will appear, where you can choose to insert a row above the selected cell, a column to the left of the selected cell, or an individual cell, with the option of shifting the existing cells down or to the right. Deleting rows and columns works in the same way, using the delete commands available on the Home tab in the Cells group and the right-click menu. Sometimes it will be necessary to change the size of a row or column in order to display all the data in the cell. You also might want to change the size of a row or column just for appearance. In either case, resizing a row or column is quite easy. To change the size of a column, place your mouse pointer on the line that divides the column headers. For example, if you wanted to change the size of column C, you would place your mouse pointer on the line separating C and D. Your cursor will turn into a vertical line with a small arrow on either side. When you see this pointer, click and hold the left mouse button to drag the column edge to the left or right. As you drag, you will see the size in pixels. When you release your mouse, the size of the column will be changed. To change the size of a row, place your pointer on the line separating the row headers and then click and drag up or down to make the row larger or smaller. To automatically fit a column or row to its contents, double-click the separator. There are more resizing commands available by clicking Home, then Format. The two auto-fit commands will automatically size the row or columns to their contents. The row height and column width commands will open a dialog box where you can enter the desired dimensions. Excel also gives you the ability to temporarily hide rows and/or columns and then unhide them when necessary. This is useful for reducing the width of very large spreadsheets to make it easier to read. However, you should note that if a column or row is hidden, they won't appear if the sheet is printed. To begin, select the row or column that you want to hide. Next, click Home, then Format, and then Hide and Unhide, and choose the desired option. In this example, column B is hidden. To re-show it, we would reselect the surrounding columns and click Home, then Format, then Hide and Unhide, and finally Unhide Columns. The column would then reappear as normal. Excel also enables you to clear the data from cells rather than deleting the cells entirely. You can do so by clicking the drop-down arrow on the Clear command in the Editing group of the Home tab. You can then choose from several available options. Each Clear option produces a different result. The Clear All option clears all contents, formats and comments that are contained in the selected cells. The Clear Formats option clears only the formats that are applied to the selected cells. The Clear Contents option clears only the contents in the selected cells, leaving formats and comments in place. The Clear Comments and Notes option clears any comments or notes attached to the selected cells. And the Clear Hyperlinks option clears any hyperlinks attached to the selected cells. You can also select a row or column from its header, right-click and select Delete. However, please be aware that this removes the row or column and the content completely. When learning how to modify a worksheet, a good place to start is formatting text. Thomas Bradshaw from Westcal Publishing has used formatting tools in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint before and can see that many of the icons and tools look similar in Excel. Thomas wants to refresh his knowledge on font options and different methods for applying formatting to the text in his documents. He also needs to find out how to create hyperlinks. Let's get started by taking a closer look at fonts. A font is a complete set of characters with a typeface and style that are used to create text. Fonts are very customizable. You can change their size, type and color to create the effect you are looking for. On screen you can see an example of a few different fonts. Naturally, the font group of the Home tab is where you'll find most font commands. You can choose the font face, size, color and effects here. The top row of this group contains commands to change the font face, change the font size, incrementally increase or decrease the font size. The bottom row of this group contains commands to apply bold, italic, underline, double underline and strike through effects, format cell borders, add shading to cells, and change the font color. Now, let's explore the range of methods for formatting text in Excel. Many font and formatting settings can be found in the Format Cells dialog box. A variety of option buttons on the Home tab open this dialog box to an associated tab. For example, clicking the Alignment option button will open the Alignment tab in the Format Cells dialog box. However, the easiest way is to use the Control and 1 shortcut or to right-click a cell and click Format Cells. When you open the Format Cells dialog box, you'll see a number of tabs at the top. Each tab allows you to view and modify different options based on the currently active cells. Let's look at the 6 tabs in the dialog box. Number is where you can apply and modify number formatting. Alignment helps you to modify the alignment, orientation, text options, and direction of the text in the cell. Font is where you change font face, style, size, color, effects, and underline type. Border provides you with options to customize the outline of the cell. Fill is where you can customize the background color of the cell. And with protection, you can lock or hide the cell. With the Format Painter, you can copy just the formatting from one cell and apply it to others in your worksheet. To use the Format Painter, select a cell that has the format you want to copy, then click the Home tab and then Format Painter. The cell that you selected will be identified with a scrolling dashed border, and your mouse pointer will now have a paintbrush beside it. Now, any cell or range you select will assume the formatting of the cell that you selected. As you see below, the value of the cells remain the same, but the formatting from the originally selected cell is copied. The Format Painter will then automatically turn off. To continue with more cells, you can click the command again. To cancel the process while the Format Painter is activated, press Escape. To prevent the Format Painter from turning off after the first application, so you can copy the format to more than one cell without having to reactivate the Format Painter, double-click Format Painter after selecting the cell that has the format you want to copy. Once you have finished, press Escape. Many Excel features, including the font face and size menus, feature live preview. This means that while you are scrolling through options, you will see a preview of that effect applied to the selected text or active cell. When you right-click on a cell, you will see a small formatting toolbar at the top of the pop-up menu. This toolbar is called the Mini Toolbar. It contains popular commands related to whatever object is currently selected. For example, if you have text selected, you will see formatting commands available in the font and alignment groups of the Home tab. A really useful feature in Excel is being able to create and embed hyperlinks into text in a cell. If you need to reference an online document, folder, or website that are relevant to the data contained in your document, hyperlinks can be used to take people straight there from Excel. For example, if Thomas was using a worksheet that monitored income from invoices, there could be a link to an online folder that contained the digital copies of the reference invoices. To create a hyperlink, select the text or object that you want to add the link to. Then click the Insert tab and then Link. You can also access the hyperlink command by pressing Ctrl and K. With either method, the Insert Hyperlink dialog box will open. At the top of the dialog box, in the Text to Display field, you can change the text displayed in the cell containing the link. Then in the Link to category, you can choose to link to a URL, an existing file, another place within the workbook, a new document, or an email address. In the case of a URL, you enter the URL into the address field. In this example, a URL for the Microsoft website has been entered. Click OK to create the link. The text in the selected cell will turn blue and be underlined, indicating to users that clicking this item will launch the hyperlink. To modify the hyperlink, perform the Insert Hyperlink command again. To remove it, use the Clear command on the Home tab. Spreadsheets can sometimes be hard to read. The ability to format cells is essential for making a worksheet visually understandable and easily readable. Thomas from Westcal Publishing has had a company account workbook that he was working on sent back to him from his manager. Even though the content of the workbook was correct, Thomas's manager could not see the data he needed to see at a glance. Thomas needs to work on the design and layout of his workbook so that his manager can easily and quickly find the information they are looking for. Let's take a look at some formatting tools and techniques. Like working with fonts, you can also modify the appearance of cells in a variety of ways. For example, you can change the border options, fill colors, and even the format of data. To add a border, select a range of data, click the arrow next to the Borders button, and choose which type of border you wish to apply to the range. There is also a No Border option, which will remove an applied border. The formatting will be applied and the selected option will now be available by clicking the Border command directly. For example, Here we applied thick outside borders to the cell, so this option is now reflected on the border icon. To apply a fill color, select the range of cells that you want to modify. Then click the Home tab and then the Fill Color drop-down arrow and click the desired color. Just like the Borders command, the Fill command will show the most recently applied color. Click the icon directly to apply it to additional cells. Number formats are used to change the appearance of data and improve its readability. You can find the related commands in the Number group of the Home tab. Let's take a look at these commands. You can select a number format from the drop-down menu. Currency gives default currency for country settings in your version of Microsoft Office. Apply the percentage number format. Please be aware that this option makes a number look like a percentage but also multiplies by 100. It should only be used when formatting results of certain types of percentage calculations. The accounting comma applies 2 decimal places and inserts a comma between increments of 1000. You can increase or decrease the decimal position. One thing to watch out for when formatting numbers is that the cell width doesn't always provide enough room for the data and its formatting. This will cause Excel to display a series of hash symbols in place of the actual data. This problem can be solved by adjusting the column width or by choosing another number format. You can also create a custom number format. To begin, select the cells that contain numbers you want to format. Now click the Home tab, then Number Format, and then More Number Formats. You can also right-click the selection and click Format Cells or press Ctrl and 1. The Format Cells dialog box will open. You can use this dialog box in 2 ways. You can choose a category from the left and use the options in the center of the dialog box to modify that number format, or create a custom format using one of the last 2 categories. The Special category allows you to select custom number formats based on geographic location. The Custom category contains miscellaneous formatting options. Alignment tools are another way to make your worksheet more attractive and readable. Let's have a look at a few key tools, including alignment, text wrapping, and cell merging. To align data within a worksheet, select the cells you want to adjust and then use the command in the Alignment group of the Home tab. The top row of options control vertical alignment, while the bottom row controls horizontal alignment. The indent commands in the Alignment group of the Home tab allow you to adjust the space between a cell border and its contents. For example, if the contents of a cell are left aligned, clicking Increase Indent right arrow will increase the space between the contents and the left border. Similarly, clicking Decrease Indent left arrow will decrease that space. When you enter text into a cell and that text exceeds the cell's dimensions, the contents will continue and overlap to the next cell if it contains no data. If the neighbouring cell does contain data, the content will be truncated and hidden, although the full text will be displayed in the formula bar. Clicking Wrap Text with the cell selected will adjust the row height to accommodate overlapping text. Wrap Text can be removed by clicking Wrap Text again. When you use wrap text on a cell, it makes the whole row deeper. You can achieve the same effect using manual line breaks. To add a manual line break to a cell, press Alt and Enter at the desired break location when editing the contents. Occasionally, you may need a long cell for a heading, or you may need to resize columns or rows so that longer items can be displayed. The Merge and Center options allow you to select a group of cells either across a row or down a column and combine them to form one large cell. To do this, select a group of adjacent cells and click Merge and Center. You can see that now the 2 cells look like a single cell with the text centered. If you have a heading centered over a block of data and new columns of information are added, the heading will no longer look correctly centered. The solution is to simply click on the merged heading. Select Merge and Center and turn off. Now highlight the extended area and click on Merge and Center again, and that's it. Please note that you can access a few more options from the Merge and Center drop-down menu. Range names are meaningful labels that you can assign to individual cells or cell ranges. You can use a range name anywhere you would use a cell or range reference. For example, you can use a name such as Clients to describe a range of cells rather than referencing cells A1 to A15 directly. To apply a cell name or range name, first use your cursor to select the cells that you want to name. Next, type the name that you would like to use into the name box. Pressing Enter will apply this name. From then on, you'll be able to select this range by clicking the Name box drop-down menu and clicking on the range name that you set. You will look at cell and range names in more detail later in the course. You should note that range names are not case sensitive, cannot contain spaces, and cannot start with a number. Excel offers a number of tools to help you find values, objects, and formatting in your worksheet and replace those items as necessary. Thomas Bradshaw's manager at Westcal Publishing noticed that the naming of some items in the company accounts workbook is incorrect because the name of the client has recently changed. Thomas needs to be able to find multiple occurrences of this name throughout the workbook and change them all. One of Thomas's colleagues mentioned that there was a quick way to do this using the Find and Select feature in Excel. Let's explore what this feature has to offer and how to use it. The Find command is used to locate information or data within the current workbook. A single cell value or multiple cells with the same value can be replaced with an updated value if required. To access the Find and Replace feature, click Find and Select, then Find, or press Ctrl and F. Either action will display the Find and Replace dialog box with the options hidden by default. The Find and Replace dialog box has lots of options on the Find tab to help with this task. Let's have a look at the commands in this dialog box. The Find What drop-down menu allows you to display any recently searched items. The Options button will expand this dialog box and show you more search options, such as matching text case. The Find All button will execute the search command and look for all instances within the worksheet. The Find Next button, on the other hand, will allow you to search for the next occurrence of the search term. Clicking it again will highlight the next occurrence, and so on. If you click the Options button, you have more choices to refine your search. You can now choose to search formatting within a sheet or workbook, in rows or columns, or by matching the case, all by making selections in the drop-down boxes. The Find and Replace dialog box contains some powerful advanced search options that you can use to find exactly what you are looking for in a workbook. Clicking the Format button will open the Find Format dialog box. Here you can specify the exact format type that you would like to search for. The Format drop-down menu allows you to choose a format to look for based upon an existing cell. The Within drop-down menu allows you to choose between searching the current worksheet or the entire workbook. The Search drop-down menu is used to specify if the search should be performed by row or column. The Look In drop-down menu is used to specify if you want to search formulas, values, or comments. The Match Case checkbox allows you to specify whether you want the results of your search to match the exact text case of your search terms. Similarly, the Match Entire Cell Contents checkbox will only return results that are the exact and complete characters of the search terms. If you click the Replace tab in the Find dialog box, you have the option to search for a term and replace it with something else. You also can jump directly to this tab by pressing Ctrl and H or by clicking Find and Select, then Replace. If any instances of the search criteria entered in the Find What text field are found, they can be replaced with whatever is in the Replace With text field. All you have to do is click the Replace button each time Excel finds something. If you click the Replace All button, Excel will replace every instance of the word or number it finds with the replacement term without waiting for you to click Replace for each one. The Options button will show additional controls and commands that you can use to provide more specific detail for your replace action. Find and Replace also lets you search for and replace certain types of formatting. In the second half of the dialog box, there are options to search worksheets, workbooks, and formulas. Once you are happy with your options, click Replace to update the format one cell at a time, or click Replace All to perform all of the replacements at once. The Go To command enables you to locate and navigate to a named cell or cell range within your workbook. You can also use certain criteria to navigate to specific areas of a workbook. This can be useful if you have a large workbook with multiple worksheets and you need to quickly navigate to specific data ranges or named areas. To view the Go To window, click the Home tab, then Find and Select, then Go To. You can also directly open the Go To dialog box by pressing Ctrl and G on your keyboard. Using this dialog box, you can quickly go to any named range within your workbook. For example, here you can see the headers range that we can quickly go to and select. Clicking the Special button will display the Go To Special dialog box that allows you to select cells based on chosen criteria. For example, you can choose blank cells, cells that contain comments, and much more. You can display this dialog box directly by clicking Find and Select, then Go To Special. It's very common that when typing a lot of text, you make a few spelling and grammatical mistakes. As with many applications in the Microsoft Office product family, Excel includes a robust spell checking tool, allowing you to check the contents of your workbook for spelling errors and to fix them. While Excel does not point out spelling errors in real time like Microsoft Word does, the spell checker will fix any problems that are found. To start checking the spelling and grammar in your workbook, first open the spelling dialog box by clicking on Review and then Spelling, or press F7. The spelling dialog box will open, indicating the dictionary language in the title field. You can select from available dictionaries by clicking the drop-down arrow in the dictionary language field. Excel will search the active worksheet and present any misspelled or unidentified words for your review, starting from the active cell. Here the word region is misspelled and shown at the top of the dialog box. There are 3 suggestions listed in the suggestions window and several buttons on the right of the screen to control how to address the error as described below. Ignore once will ignore this particular instance and keep checking the rest of the worksheet. Ignore all will ignore all instances of the misspelled word and keep checking the rest of the sheet. Add to dictionary will add this particular word to Excel's dictionary, so each subsequent entry is listed as correct. This is useful for proper names. Change will change this particular instance of the misspelled unrecognized word to whatever is currently highlighted in the suggestions box. Change all will change all instances of the misspelled unrecognized word to whatever is currently highlighted in the suggestions box. Autocorrect. Clicking this button will make autocorrect automatically change this instance of the word to whatever Excel feels is correct. Options will open the Excel Options dialog box to the Proofing category. Here you can change autocorrect options and set additional corrective actions. Undo last. If you accidentally change something with the previous misspelled or unrecognized word, click this button to revert that change and then continue checking the worksheet. Cancel will stop checking for spelling errors and close this dialog box. Depending on which cell is active when launching the spelling dialog, Excel may display an information dialog box asking if you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet. Clicking Yes will continue the spell check, while clicking No will end the process. To check spelling on more than one worksheet at a time, press Shift, then click on the additional inactive sheets that you would like to add to your spell check. If you want to spell check all worksheets in your workbook, right-click on the Active Sheet tab and select All Sheets from the menu. When the checking is complete, click OK to return to your work. Have you ever tried to print from Excel? I have, and it didn't come out quite the way I expected. We live in a time where everything is done digitally. However, hard copies or printouts are still required in some circumstances, and knowing how to print from your workbook or data from parts of your workbook is essential. Thomas Bradshaw has been asked by his manager at West Cal Publishing to print a hard copy of some data in the West Cal sales report so that they can provide an update on sales revenue and bonuses in a meeting with stakeholders. Thomas has attempted printing from Excel before, but he didn't know how to configure the settings and page layout to get the results he would have liked. Thomas needs to quickly learn the basics in page layout and print preparation so that he can carry out this task for the manager. Let's have a look at how to use the printing functionality in Excel. There are a range of print options available in Excel to provide you with the tools to achieve the perfect print. The print options can be accessed in the Backstage view by clicking the File tab and then Print. You can also use the Ctrl and P shortcut. The right side of the print area provides a scaled-down version of what your document would look like if it were printed with the current settings. You can flip through the pages using the arrows at the bottom of the screen. There are also 2 commands in the bottom right-hand corner of this view. Click the left command to show or hide the margins and click the right one to zoom to 100%. On the left side of the print area, you will see the print command, which you can use to send the file from your computer to an available printer. Next to it is the Copies increment box, which you can use to choose the number of copies that you would like to print. Below is the Printer drop-down menu that you can use to select a printer. The Printer properties will provide more detailed options in a dialog box. Finally, the Settings section allows you to choose page ranges, orientation, size, margins, and more. To print selected worksheets or a workbook, you can specify which parts of your workbook you would like to print. By default, Print Active Sheets will be selected, so only the currently displayed worksheet will be printed. The Print Entire Workbook option will print all worksheets within the current workbook. Print Selection lets you choose to print selected cells only. To open the Page Setup dialog box, click the Page Setup link at the bottom of the Settings section. You can also click the dialog box launcher button in the Page Setup group of the Page Layout tab. With either method, the Page Setup dialog box will open. This dialog box includes 4 tabs that provide controls to customize how your workbook is printed. Note that some of the options in this dialog box can also be found in the print area of the Backstage view. Excel has predefined views which helps you to control how you view your worksheet. You can also customize views. For example, you can choose which elements on the screen are visible or are hidden. The Workbook Views group on the View tab lets you switch between the different views. When you start Excel, Normal View will be selected. You can switch between views using the commands on the status bar as well. From left to right, you can switch between Normal, Page Layout and Page Break Preview views. You can also adjust which elements of the worksheet will be visible by checking or unchecking the element checkbox in the Show group of the View tab. Have you ever had a printout where the pages had no titles or had a single row or column of figures on a page by itself? You'll know that this requires you to keep flipping back to the first page while you're reading. When you're preparing to print, Microsoft Excel has great page layout features that solves these issues for you. You have a lot of control over page setup with features such as headers and footers, margins, and page orientation. Let's explore these in Excel by starting with headers and footers. Click the Option button in the Page Setup group of the Page Layout tab. The Page Setup dialog box will open. Then, click the Header Footer tab. Here you can choose a variety of headers and footers from the appropriate menus. In this example, let's choose the file name as the header and the page number for the footer. Click OK to create your header and footer. In addition to basic header and footer settings, the Header Footer tab on the Page Setup dialog box also includes more detailed settings. You can find these settings near the bottom of the tab. These options allow you to set different footers for odd pages, even pages, and the first page. You can also add custom headers and footers using the buttons in the middle of the dialog box. Open the Custom Header dialog box. Notice that there are 3 boxes that equate to positions on the page. You also have a toolbar of options including text type, page numbering, date and time, and insert picture. You can see what your custom header looks like by switching to the Page Layout view. You can also set alignment and scaling options. If you click Margins in the Page Layout tab, you will see a menu with different preset margin options. Simply click an option to apply it. For more options, click the Custom Margins command. Alternatively, you can click the dialog box launcher button in the Page Setup group and open the Margins tab. With either command, the Margins tab of the Page Setup dialog box will be displayed. Here you can manually set the margin sizes for the current worksheet. You can also center the page's content on the page horizontally and vertically. You can set text alignment on the page as well as header and footer margins. The final print option that we will look at is page orientation. You will find this setting in the Print category of Backstage view. This setting allows you to choose whether your worksheet will be printed portrait with the long side vertically or landscape with the long side horizontally. You can also find this command on the Page tab of the Page Setup dialog box, or by clicking Orientation in the Page Layout tab. Have you ever tried to print from Excel and ended up with misshapen worksheets and hard to read data? How can you get a better view of your worksheet so you know where you'd like to have page breaks before you think about setting them up? Any time that you decide to print a workbook, you should always ensure that the page layout and print options are configured properly. Let's take a more detailed look at page layout and print options to help ensure that your worksheets are printed to the highest standard possible. You can adjust the zoom settings for your worksheet so that you can enlarge or reduce the amount of information that is displayed on the screen at one time. To either increase or reduce the zoom level, click the View tab and then Zoom. The Zoom dialog box will open with options to choose from a variety of zoom presets. You can also enter a custom zoom level into the custom text box. Click OK to apply your zoom settings. You can also adjust the zoom level with the zoom slider on the status bar. Remember that zoom is measured by percentages, so 200% would be the equivalent of zooming in 2 times. Page breaks are used to identify where a new page begins and another ends. Excel will automatically determine where page breaks appear based upon the paper size that you selected and its orientation, but you can modify these breaks and add your own. When viewing your workbook, page breaks are identified by thin dashed lines either vertically or horizontally. Page breaks may only be displayed after you have viewed a print preview of the current workbook. They can sometimes be hard to see unless you are using the page break view. To insert a manual page break, first click on the cell where you want the page break to be placed. A vertical page break will be added to the left of the selected cell and a horizontal page break will be added to the top of it. Next, click the Page Layout tab, then Breaks, and then Insert Page Break. To remove a page break, click to select the cell that is either to the immediate right or the bottom of the break. Next, click the Page Layout tab, then Breaks, and then Remove Page Break. Clicking the Reset All Page Breaks option in the menu will remove all the manual page breaks in the current worksheet. It's important to note that you can't add a page break to force Excel to fit more on a page. If the automatic page break is coming at an unwanted place, you can only ask Excel to move on to a new page sooner. There are some useful tools that can help you configure your page for printing, including selecting a print area or choosing whether to print titles, row and column headings, and grid lines. The Print Area feature allows you to choose exactly which area of your spreadsheet to print. To begin, select the range of cells that you want to print. Next, click the Page Layout tab, then Print Area, then Set Print Area. Once the print area is set, it will be surrounded by page break lines that are solid rather than dashed. To clear a print area, select the area in question. Then click Print Area and then Clear Print Area. Please note, while you have a print area defined, nothing else will print. You must clear the print area if you want to change what you are printing. If you are working with a worksheet that will span multiple pages when printed, you have the option to have the row and column titles repeat. This ensures that each page has the appropriate title that identifies each row and column, so you don't end up with a page of data that contains no labeling information. To access the print title options, click Print Titles. You can also click the dialog box launcher button in the Page Setup group and then click the Sheet tab. Using the rows to repeat at top and columns to repeat at left text boxes, you can choose exactly which cells you want repeated. Note that this tab also includes some more configuration options, such as the row and column headings checkbox. By enabling this option, you can print the alphabetic column headers and numeric row headers along with your worksheet. This option is disabled by default. Grid lines refer to the thin horizontal and vertical lines that divide a worksheet into rows and columns. Such grid lines are very useful in helping to separate data and facilitate the readability of your worksheets. For this reason, it is generally a good idea to include grid lines in your printout. You can turn grid lines on and off from here. Or go to the Page Layout tab and check the Print checkbox under the Grid Lines header in the Sheet Options group. If you find that the worksheet you want to print will span too many pages, you can choose to restrict the printout to a set number of pages. This will cause Excel to scale the size of your pages down in order to fit them onto the chosen number of pages. Or you can also choose to increase the scale so that your worksheet will appear larger and possibly more readable on the page, but take up more printed pages as a result. All of these scaling options are found on the Page Layout tab within the Scale to Fit group. Clicking either the Width or Height drop-down menus will allow you to choose the number of pages that you want the printout to span in those directions. The Scale Increment box, on the other hand, allows you to scale the content of your worksheets up or down. When adjusting the scaling options, take care not to shrink the content of your worksheets down too small, as this will make the data very difficult to read. Be careful not to make the content too big either, or you could end up with a worksheet that requires too many pages to print. Congratulations, you have reached the end of this module. Let's recap on the key points from this module, looking at Excel and the basic features and functionality that it provides. You looked at what Excel is and why it's useful, that it's an essential tool for anyone working with numbers. That could be account managers, financial analysts, administrative assistants, data professionals, business analysts, amongst many other roles. It's fundamentally a digital spreadsheet application with a vast array of tools for transforming, processing, and displaying data of all kinds. You started by learning all about the interface, that an Excel worksheet is made up of rows and columns that intersect to create cells. Data is contained within this cellular grid, and there are a range of features and functions contained within the ribbon, toolbars, and backstage area. You learned about file formats and how to save your files. Next, you started building some practical skills in working with data, rows, and columns in a worksheet, such as selecting cells and how to move or copy cells and their contents to other areas of the workbook or even other applications. You discovered that Excel can detect a pattern in data and help streamline sequencing with its fill features. You learned how to modify a worksheet, such as how to manipulate and edit rows and columns, and how to use Excel's formatting features for customizing text and cells, such as fonts, numbers, styles, borders, and alignment. You also explored the tools for finding and replacing data in a worksheet and for spell checking any textual data. Finally, you learned how to configure page layout and setup in preparation for printing a hard copy of your worksheet. And that's it. You've completed the entry-level part of this course on working smarter with Microsoft 365 Excel. Well done. Hello and welcome. Now that you have a basic understanding of Excel and its features, let's get started with one of the most versatile and powerful components in Excel, functions. Imagine that you have been given some Excel workbooks that contain sales and financial reports, and you have been asked to analyze the data to assess the performance of the company and its employees. Well, Microsoft Excel has some incredible features that will make these tasks a lot easier than they may initially sound. Excel's vast catalogue of pre-built functions are there to serve almost every purpose you could possibly need to achieve when constructing formula to calculate, compare, analyze, organize, arrange and display various kinds of data. You will discover that the more you are able to understand and work with functions, the better you will become at using Microsoft Excel. In this module, you'll explore what makes a function, how they're comprised, why they're useful, and where they can be used. And you'll identify different methods for constructing formulas and inserting functions in a worksheet before you start applying them in a practical way. You'll discover the difference between sorting and filtering and how both of these features can be applied to organize and arrange how data is displayed. You'll see how sorting can be used to arrange data in an order such as alphabetical, and filtering can be used to refine the data by criteria. You'll learn what cell and range names are, why they are useful, and how to add, edit and delete them in an Excel worksheet. Before looking at how to use cell and range names in formulas, you will discover that Excel also has a wide range of specialized functions that can be used to perform complex operations on data for a variety of different purposes, and explore some of the specialized function categories, the syntax that defines them, and how they can be applied to manipulate and control data. You'll learn how to use text functions with various operations to manage, refine and extract text data, including functions that enable you to trim, join and transpose text values in a worksheet, as well as change the case of text. Finally, you'll explore how to use logical functions that apply conditional logic to produce a true or false result that can be used to analyze and organize data, and examine the main logical functions and, or and if, and how they can be used with data. By the end of this module, you'll be able to work with formulas and functions, sort and filter data, apply a range to data, use specialized functions, use text functions, and use logical functions. Learning these core skills and applying and using functions will create strong foundations for the rest of your learning journey in Microsoft Excel. Have you ever had difficulty using formulas and functions in Microsoft Excel? I know I have. Thomas Bradshaw from Westcal Publishing has to start using Excel for reporting, invoicing, ordering and timesheet keeping as he trains to become an account manager. In order to do this, Thomas needs to learn how to use formulas and functions. One of the most powerful features in Excel is the ability to perform real-time calculations on data within workbooks. Using these powerful features will enable Thomas to save time and reduce errors when trying to calculate complex or simple equations. Formulas are mathematical expressions that calculate the value of cell contents. When cells contain numerical data, you can perform multiple mathematical operations on the cell content. The results of these operations will be shown in the cell that contains the formula. Formulas can be simple, such as adding two cell values, or quite complex, involving multiple mathematical operations. Let's take a look at the formula bar. You can start by opening the Westcal Publishing Sales Report document. Firstly, a function is a predefined formula and a quick way to enter certain calculations. For example, the sum function creates a formula that adds blocks of numbers. There are many functions built into Excel, and you'll explore more of them in another lesson. The FX button on the left side of the formula bar opens the Insert Function dialog box. However, typing a formula into a cell or into the formula bar just below the ribbon is the most straightforward method of inserting basic Excel formulas. The process always starts by typing an equal sign, followed by the name of an Excel function, a calculation, a value, or a cell reference. You can tell if a cell contains a formula by clicking it to make it the active cell. If there is a formula in the active cell, it will be shown in the formula bar. Here, the sum function is being used to add data from cells C2 through to F2. Now let's take a look at some of the important elements that make up an Excel formula. You may have noticed that formulas always begin with an equal sign. You could read it as the number in the cell as a result of the equation. Formulas can contain cell references such as A1, numbers such as 23, or functions such as sum, open parentheses, B2 colon B9, close parentheses. And what that says to Excel is get the sum of everything from B2 to B9. Cell references are not case sensitive. These are all examples of valid formulas. You can enter a formula by typing directly into a cell or into the formula bar. If you include a cell reference in a formula, such as B3 multiplied by 6, and that cell reference itself contains a second formula, such as B1 plus B2, stored in B3, that second formula B1 plus B2 will be evaluated first, and the result will be used in B3 multiplied by 6. Let's look at some examples of the symbols that are used in formulas to tell Excel what mathematical action to perform. Here you have a list of 8 operators listed from top to bottom in order of precedence. Operators are symbols that represent specific mathematical operations, including the plus sign, minus sign, division sign, and multiplication sign. Operators specify the type of calculation that you want to perform on parts of a formula. When you create a formula with several operators, Excel evaluates and performs the calculations in a specific order. For instance, Excel always performs multiplication before addition. This order is called the order of operator precedence. This means that in Excel, some mathematical symbols are considered to have a higher priority than others, and this influences how Excel processes a calculation. The table on screen shows that the operators listed from top to bottom in order of precedence. So Excel does not simply calculate expressions from left to right. Certain operations are performed before others. If a formula read B1 plus C5 minus D10, that would be processed left to right. But if a formula read B1 plus C5 multiplied by D10, the multiplication would be done first and then the addition. You can see how that might produce a result that you didn't intend. You now know that Excel follows certain rules of precedence. Multiplication and division have higher priority than any other mathematical operator. But it's important to understand that they have equal priority to each other. For example, in the formula B1 multiplied by C5 divided by D10, Excel simply works from left to right. Addition and subtraction are next in overall priority, but again have equal precedence calculated from left to right. Greater than, less than have equal precedence calculated from left to right, but lowest priority overall. So how can you be confident that Excel is processing your formula in the right order? You can impose your own order of operations by enclosing expressions in parentheses. The operations inside the parentheses will be evaluated before the operations outside. Putting part of the formula in parentheses indicates to Excel to do this part of the calculation first. If you have parentheses within parentheses, the expression in the inner parentheses will be evaluated first, and the result will be used to evaluate the expression in the outer parentheses. One easy way to remember precedence order is to remember the word BEDMAS, which stands for brackets or parentheses, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. As you've seen, cell references are included in formulas using the column first then row number format. If the same formula needs to be included on every row of a block of data, Excel speeds up the process for you by allowing you to create the formula in one cell and copy it into other cells underneath. This is a huge time saver. But what happens to the cell references when Excel copies the formula? Cell references are naturally relative references, which simply means that if a formula is moved or copied to another location, Excel will change the references relative to its new location. For example, the formula C1 plus D5 copied down a row would become C2 plus D6. In a situation where you need the same formula to be repeated in every row of a block of data and still work correctly in each row, this is incredibly useful as it means that you can copy the formula to save time. But what about a situation where you don't want one of the references to be adjusted when you move or copy the formula? You can prevent the adjustment by changing the reference from relative to absolute. Absolute references use dollar signs before the cell or row to make sure a formula always references the same location, no matter where the formula is copied or moved to. You can assign absolute cell references in 3 ways. Dollar column, dollar row. Both the row and column reference will not change. Dollar column row. The column reference will not change, but the row can. Column dollar row. The row reference will not change, but the column can. As you can see, a dollar sign simply fixes part of a cell reference. Now that you have an understanding of what formulas and functions are and the main components involved, Let's have a look at how to use functions in a practical way in Excel. The purpose of a function is to provide you with an easy way to perform a complex calculation so that you can focus on results instead of trying to remember your grade school math equations. Let's explore how to make the best of the functions provided in Excel. Functions are pre-made operations that are used to perform calculations. Excel features a few functions related to basic math, financial applications, logic, date and time, and more. Every function formula will automatically have the function word followed by parentheses. Inside the parentheses will be the arguments. Arguments define the data to calculate, such as a value, a cell reference, or any input that can be used in a calculation. You may notice that inside the parentheses, the arguments are separated from each other by punctuation marks, such as commas or semicolons. Together, functions and arguments comprise a formula. Let's have a look at some methods for creating formulas in an Excel worksheet. You can start by adding a column of 10 numbers. To create a formula using the numbers in these 10 cells, you could type equals A1 plus A2 plus A3 through to A10. However, this would quickly become tedious and would also make the spreadsheet harder to work with. A much more efficient way of performing this calculation is to use the sum function, followed by selecting the range of cells you want to add to your formula. This is much easier than typing out a very long formula and allows for more flexibility if you need to include additional rows within the formula range. You can create the same function using autocomplete. As you are typing into the formula bar, Excel will suggest functions and show a description of the top result. You can use your arrow keys to select the desired function and press Tab to apply it, or continue typing and ignore Excel's suggestions. Once the function is entered, Excel will prompt you to enter each argument as necessary. For the sum function, the arguments will be the values and/or cells to be added. It is good to remember that you can click and drag to add cell ranges to the formula. When the formula is complete, add the closing parentheses, press Enter, and Excel will calculate the value. So far, you have used the sum function, which is quite easy to remember. Now let's try out the Insert Function dialog box to create functions. Thomas from Westcal Publishing needs to calculate the average amount of sales revenue made by each representative of the sales team over the past 4 quarters of the financial year. You could use functions to achieve this. Let's have a look at how to do this. Open the Westcal Publishing Sales Report document. You can start by first selecting the cell into which you want to insert the function, then click the Insert Function button on the formula bar, or click the Formulas tab and then Insert Function. The Insert Function dialog box will open. At the top, you can choose a category. Selecting a function in the Select a Function dialog box will display a description of the function and the required arguments. Choose the desired function from the list and click OK to insert it. The Function Arguments dialog box will appear. Here you can select the cells containing the arguments for the function. In many cases, Excel will predict the arguments based on the position of the function and automatically enter them in one or more of the argument fields. Required arguments will be indicated in bold and optional arguments will be indicated in plain type. Selecting one of the argument fields will display a description and the constraints of that argument. If required, complete the arguments by selecting the argument field, then selecting the appropriate cell or range of cells to complete the function. Then click OK. You can also insert common formulas using the AutoSum command on the Home tab. First, click the cell immediately below the data if using AutoSum on a column, or to the immediate right of the data if using AutoSum on a row you want to calculate. Then click the AutoSum command to use that function, or click the drop-down arrow to choose a different one. The function and the arguments will be inserted based on the surrounding data. As well, the column or row of data to be summed will be highlighted. Press Enter to complete the formula. Let's take a quick look at the functions available in the AutoSum menu. Sum adds values in a specified range. Average determines the average value in a range. Count numbers determines the number of cells that contain a numeric value in a range. Max finds the highest value in a range, and Min finds the lowest value in a range. You can view AutoSum calculations in the status bar. When you select a range of data, Excel will automatically calculate the average, count, and sum of the data and display it in the status bar. To view additional automatic calculations, right-click anywhere on the status bar to display the Customize Status Bar dialog box, where you can click to select or deselect from the available options. By default, Excel will automatically calculate formula results. However, this process can be delayed depending on the size of the workbook. To force Excel to calculate the workbook, click the Formulas tab and then Calculate Now. The calculations will then be completed, although you will not receive a notification when the process finishes. Have you ever wondered what the difference is between sorting and filtering in Excel? Suppose you have a long list of records including dates, products, sales figures, customer names and more. You can quickly organize the data to display the results that you need using Excel's sort and filter features. Thomas at Westcal Publishing has been asked to find a way to display only the sales results from representatives in a certain region in the company sales report. Thomas knows that Excel has two features, sort and filter, that allow you to change the display of data or refine the data shown. Thomas needs to gain a better understanding of the differences between sorting and filtering so that he can use the appropriate tool to display the specific data required. Let's take a look at the main differences between the two commands and how to use each feature. Sorting allows you to change the order of data. Text-based and numerical data can be sorted in ascending or descending order. When dates are typed correctly, they are recognized as numbers in Excel and can also then be sorted by date order. It's important to keep in mind that when you sort data, you're not changing the data in the worksheet, you're only changing how it is displayed. Additionally, while there is no option to clear a sort and return it back to its normal state, the undo command has the same effect. Finally, data will be saved in the order you sorted it in. This means that if you need to undo a sort, you can only do it in the same session as when the sort was applied. Let's have a look at how to do this by sorting data in Excel. You can start by arranging the data in alphabetical order by the region column. Right now, it is in random order. To do this, we will select the column header and click the Sort A to Z command in the Sort and Filter group of the Data tab. In this case, Excel notices that there is data in the surrounding columns that is likely related to the column you want to sort. When this happens, the Sort Warning dialog box will open and ask if you want to expand the selection or continue with the current selection. Selecting Continue with the current selection will only sort the data in column C, leaving the data in the other columns unchanged. This will result in the data becoming misaligned and inaccurate. Select Expand the selection and click Sort to correctly sort the data in all of the columns. For more options and control in sorting your data, you can click the Data tab and then Sort to open the Sort dialog box. Where your data contains column headers or titles, you can select the My Data Has Headers checkbox to sort by. You should note that if you don't check this box and you do have headings in your data, they will be sorted along with everything else. This will allow you to select the Sort By columns by the column header rather than the column letter. You can then choose from the Sort On options. You can then select the sorting order. Finally, you can add additional levels of sorting to further refine the order of your data. In this example, we can click Add Level and then further sort based on the Q1 sales revenue from largest to smallest. You can now see that the data is sorted by region and each region is then sorted by the sales values. Filtering is a bit different. It allows you to customize data display based on criteria of your choosing. For example, Thomas from Westcal Publishing needs to show sales results only from representatives in the northern region. Sorting wasn't quite right for the task, but you could use a filter to do that. Now let's have a go at applying some filtering to better arrange our data. First, you need to enable filtering. Select a cell in the data you want to filter, then click Data and then Filter. This will add Auto Filter drop-down arrows to the top of each column. To view and use the Filter drop-down menu, click the arrow for the column you want to filter. You can choose to show or hide rows by clicking to select or deselect the checkboxes next to the list of regions that are available in the data, then clicking OK to apply your settings. You can also select rows to show by typing in the search field. Excel will automatically select data that includes the letter or string being typed. Have you noticed that by typing the letter A in the search field, the region Europe has been excluded? To apply the filter, click OK. All the rows of data with Europe as the region will be hidden. You should see that the row numbers turn blue and there is a double line in the row numbers indicating where the rows are hidden. If you save your file with a filter in place, the data will still be filtered when you reopen the file. The blue numbers are a key visual indicator when you open a file that you are not seeing all the rows. A small filter icon will also appear next to the filter drop-down arrow in the region column, indicating that there is a filter applied to that column. Next, let's explore the Text Filters submenu. Clicking one of the commands in this submenu will open the Custom Auto Filter dialog box, pre-populated with the selected operator. You can then enter the criteria required. Let's choose Contains from the Text Filters menu. The Custom Auto Filter dialog box will open. Notice that you can still click the first drop-down menu to choose a different operator other than contains. However, since this is the correct operator, we will just type Asia into the text field and click OK to create the filter. We now see that only the data from the Asia region is displayed. There are two ways to clear a filter and display all data once again. You can click the Auto Filter arrow and click Clear Filter from Region, or place your cursor in the filtered column and click the Data tab and then Clear. With either command, the filter will be cleared and all data will be displayed. A key benefit to adding range names to your workbook is to ensure the formulas and calculations are easier to read and understand, especially if you are sending a workbook to a client or colleague. Thomas from Westcal Publishing needs to be able to work with large amounts of data, formulas and functions within a single document. While cell references can be used to identify where formulas are getting information to calculate data, it is not always obvious, especially to others who may be encountering the document for the first time. Thomas is aware that Excel allows you to give names to individual cells and cell ranges and then use those names in formulas and functions. Thomas wants to learn how to utilize this feature so that he can organize the worksheets efficiently and clearly so that his managers and colleagues can understand at a glance what data is being used in a formula or function. Let's look at one way to do this using cell and range names. Range names are meaningful labels that you can assign to individual cells or cell ranges. You can use a range name anywhere you would use a cell reference or cell range reference. This means you can use a name such as employees to describe a range of cells rather than their cell references. Range names make formulas much more readable, improve worksheet clarity, and greatly improve worksheet organization. Range names can even help in the overall design of your worksheet. On screen, cells A2 and B2 have been given names total sales and total expenses, and those names have been used in a formula in cell C2. As an added bonus, range names are absolute references. This means that if you copy a formula or use autofill while using named ranges, the formula will maintain its original cell references. Most small worksheets are usually constructed by filling a sheet with data and then performing calculations. However, range names enable you to create a worksheet by doing the opposite, constructing formulas and then adding the data. When you are designing your worksheet, you can create formulas using names instead of traditional cell references and then define the names for the corresponding ranges as data becomes available. Keep in mind when choosing cell or range names that all names must start with a letter, underscore or backslash. Beyond the first character, you can add any letter or number you wish. Additionally, names cannot contain any spaces, nor can they contain cell references. Finally, it is important to note that cell and range names are not case sensitive. Let's take a look at how defining and naming ranges of data works in Excel. On screen now is an empty worksheet with a defined formula, but no defined names, which results in a name error. This error will remain visible until both value 1 and value 2 have been defined. Let's add some range names using the name box. To apply a cell name or range name, first use your cursor to select the cells that you want to name. Next, type the name that you would like to use into the name box. Pressing Enter will apply this name. From then on, you'll be able to select this range by clicking the name box drop-down menu and then clicking on the range name that you set. Finally, let's look at adding range names using the New Name dialog box. Cells and cell ranges can also be named using the New Name dialog box. While this technique takes a little bit longer, you have more control over what cells the name refers to. To open the New Name dialog box, click the Formula tab and then Define Name. When the New Name dialog box is displayed, you will see that the name field appears at the top. The Scope drop-down menu allows you to choose if this new name will be applied to only the current worksheet or the entire workbook. Inside the Comment text area, you can enter a brief description of the named cell or range. By default, the cells that were selected when the Define Name command was clicked will already be filled into the Refers to field. If you wish, you can change this selection by clicking on the cell selector. Once you enter your options and click OK, the named range will be created. You can see a list of all the names that have been created by going to the Formula tab and clicking Name Manager to open the Name Manager dialog box. Clicking the New button will open the New Name dialog box, which you can use to create a new range name. If you select a name from the list in the Name Manager dialog box and then click the Edit button, the Edit Name dialog box will be shown. This dialog box is identical to the New Name dialog box. The only difference is that it will be pre-populated with information from the selected range name. To delete a range name, click to select the range name in question and then click the delete button. A dialog box will then open to ask you to confirm this action. Click OK to complete the deletion process. Finally, the filter command is used to show only certain ranges based on specified criteria. This is particularly useful when working with a workbook that contains a large amount of range names, as you can quickly narrow down the list to only those ranges that you would like to work with. Cell and range names are not just useful in keeping your workbooks more organized. They can also help immensely in the creation of formulas. This is because after you have defined a cell or range name, you are able to use that name in place of the usual cell reference. This makes formulas much more readable. Let's take a look at how to use range names in formulas in your Excel workbook. In this example, you can clearly and quickly see what this formula does. If it used standard cell references, it would be more difficult to understand. Perhaps one of the easiest methods to enter cell and range names into a formula is to use the formula autocomplete feature. In the same way the autocomplete feature suggests function names based on the first few characters that you type into the formula bar, it will also suggest cell and range names in a small menu. Double-clicking on a suggestion in this menu will insert it into the formula. You can differentiate names from functions and other objects suggested by the small tag icon that appears by each name. In addition to manually entering cell and range names, you can also utilize the Use in Formula command to insert existing cells and range names into formulas. To access this command, click the Formulas tab and then Use in Formula. This action will display a drop-down menu listing all of the existing cell and range names. Clicking on an option will insert its reference into the formula bar. Functions are an extremely versatile and useful feature in Excel. Pre-built and easy to apply, the benefits of this core component are endless. Excel has a vast range of specialized functions that can be used to perform complex operations on data for a variety of different purposes, including engineering, logic, and dates. Learning how to access Excel's extensive catalog of specialized functions, then identify and use the specific functions you require, will provide a strong foundation for you to develop your skills in Excel. So, how would you define what a function is? Well, Thomas from Westcal Publishing provided a definition of a function as a predefined formula that is available in Excel and performs a specific calculation based on specified values called arguments. While the basic functions in Excel cover the majority of use cases, there are some situations where a specialized function is more appropriate. Thomas understands that to be able to find and use specialized functions, you must be familiar with their syntax and understand how they work on a fundamental level. Let's have a look at the various functions categories and the syntax that should be used to make them work. Every built-in function that is available in Excel has been categorized in one of 12 standard categories. These categories are available on the Formulas tab, with some categories available under the More Functions drop-down menu. There are many types of functions within the available 12 categories, including Financial, which offers useful functions for working out financial information, or Date and Time, which is useful for project planning as it allows you to create calculations like how many days till a deadline, and Statistical, which contains a huge range of functions for statistical analysis tasks such as count. The count function is used to count cells that contain numbers. Count A is used to count any cell that contains data, and count blank only counts empty cells. Note that you can expand the number of standard categories using add-ons. For a more extensive list of function categories available in Excel and the type of tasks they can be used for, please look at the additional resources at the end of this lesson. To successfully use functions in Excel, you must first understand the required values for the function and the order in which they are used. Functions are a major part of what makes Excel so popular, so now you will explore some different types of functions and learn some tricks that you can use to perform complex calculations. Just keep in mind that even the most complex of formulas can be broken down into simple parts. While you're creating the formula, don't forget rules for formulas that we looked at in a previous lesson. Remember to pay attention to the order of precedence using the BEDMAS acronym and think about the number of parentheses you might need. Whenever you are entering a function, either in a cell or in the formula bar, Excel will display the function syntax in a screen tip and the current argument will be bold. Excel displays the syntax of a function by first stating the function, then in brackets listing the required arguments. Any argument enclosed in square brackets is optional, where all other arguments are required. Let's create an example. You've already used the sum function to total a block of numbers. But what if you only wanted to include figures from a particular area or a particular month? For that, you can use a variation on sum called SUMIF. You'll find that many of the standard functions have these kind of variations. The SUMIF function is used to calculate the sum of values in a specified range if they meet a specified criteria. For example, you could calculate total sales figures and only include numbers that are less than a specified value. In this formula, only values over 200,000 will be added together. The sum range argument is optional. You can use it if you want to add cells to the sum other than those specified in the argument. In this example, only numbers in the range K6 to K50 will be added together where they correspond with the text entry North America in the range B6 to B50. If you choose to leave out this argument, the function will only calculate the sum of the values from the previous range argument. So you've seen SUMIF used to add together numbers in a range that are under a certain value, and add together numbers in a range that correspond with a specified text value in a range. SUMIF can also be used to add together all numbers with a certain value that fall within a specified range. As you can see, these versatile functions can be used in a variety of ways. Another standard function that has this kind of variation is average_if. The average_if function will return the average of every cell within a range if the specified criteria are met. For example, if you want to calculate the average sale amount in a set range of sales data only for sales below a certain amount, you could use this function. In this formula, the average will be calculated for all values in the range below 200,000. The average range argument is optional. It can be used if you want to add cells to the sum other than those specified by the range argument. In this example, the average for the numbers in the range K6 to K50 will be calculated where they corresponded with the text entry of North America in the range B6 to B50. If you choose to leave out this argument, the function will only calculate the average of the values from the range argument. The COUNTIF function can be used in a very similar way to the SUMIF and average_if functions that you have looked at. The COUNTIF function will count the number of cells in a specified range if the criteria are met. For example, the function shown here could be used to count the number of sales associates who have sold a certain number of products. Or you can use COUNTIF to compare values in two lists. The functions that have been covered so far all have an equivalent ifs function that allow you to perform those respective calculations on data that requires more than just one specified criteria. With a few exceptions, such functions have very similar syntax. While you become familiar with Excel functions, you may find it challenging to know which function to use in specific situations. In such cases, tools are available to help you identify an appropriate function for your purpose. One option is the Search for a Function feature in the Insert Function dialog box. As the Search for a Function text box suggests, type a brief description of what you want to do and then click Go. Excel will offer matching suggestions in the Select a Function list. Clicking a function will display the syntax and provide a brief description. You can also select a function category from the Or Select a Category drop-down list. This will display a list of available functions in that category in alphabetical order in the Select a Function list. Once you have selected the appropriate function, click OK to open the Function Arguments dialog box where you can define the required parameters. If you need support with using functions in Excel, you can use Help. Otherwise, there are some additional resources for you at the end of this lesson. Let's have a look at how to use specialized functions in Excel. Some situations require that a function be nested inside of another function. This means that you're using the results of the nested function as arguments. Using another function as one of the arguments in the formula expands what the original function can do. Here is an example of a nested function. The two sum functions have been nested inside of a single if function. The if function will often have other functions nested inside it. The if is a useful function as it tests to see if something is true or not and asks Excel to do different things based on the result. We'll be looking at this in more detail later. The way this example works is that if the sum of data in cells A1 to A5 is greater than 10, then this formula will sum the values of cells A6 to A10 and display that result instead. If the sum of data in cells A1 to A5 is less than 10, then 0 will be displayed instead. By default, Excel workbooks will calculate the results of formulas automatically. Occasionally, you may want to switch your workbook calculations to manual recalculation so that you have more control over when formulas are calculated. Typically, you would do this if you're working with a particularly large workbook and the response times in Excel are slowed when you change a value and numerous formulas calculate the results of this change at the same time. To change the calculation options, click the Formulas tab and then Calculate Options. This drop-down menu includes the automatic default, automatic except for data tables, and manual options. If you switch to the manual option, you can then calculate formulas in your workbook manually by clicking Calculate Now. Alternatively, you can also choose to calculate only those formulas on the current worksheet by clicking Calculate Sheet. To make creating and reviewing worksheets a bit easier, you can show the formulas instead of the result on the worksheet and the printed page. To do this, click the Formulas tab and then Show Formulas. This action shows formulas within the sheet instead of the calculated results. Now that you're familiar with Excel's more commonly used functions, you will learn about some of its more specialized ones. One of the benefits of Excel is that it can handle large amounts of data which can then be analyzed for business purposes. Text data can be prone to errors, mistyping or misspelling, for example. Or the text may not be laid out correctly to facilitate the analysis. Information that is imported from other sources may often need to be amended or tidied up. Excel offers a wide range of functions that can help you tidy up text data and prepare it for analysis. Thomas from Westcal Publishing has been asked to use text functions to import textual data from another workbook and format it so it meets the formatting requirements for the destination workbook. Text functions are used in Excel to analyze text-based worksheet data. While these functions can be used for data analysis, they are typically used instead to prepare data for analysis. Thomas is aware that text functions allow you to format textual data for use in other areas. Let's start by looking at functions that are specific to text analysis. The left and right functions are used to return a specific number of characters from either the left or the right side of a text string. Typically, these functions are used in situations where you need to transfer text to a destination where there is a limit on the number of characters each entry may have. The text argument is used to declare which text you would like to transfer, while the number of characters argument is used to declare how many characters you would like transferred. Suppose that cell A1 contains John Smith as a text string in a worksheet. Let's examine the possible examples of how the left and right functions would work with this data. As the number of characters argument was not set in this function, it will default to 1 character. This means that the output for this function would be H, the last letter on the far right of the text string. With the number of characters argument set to 5, this function will result in Smith as an output, the last 5 letters on the far right of the text string. With the number of characters argument set to 5, this function would result in John, including the space, as an output, the first 5 letters on the far left of the text string. This function would return only J as an output because the number of characters argument was not set. Similar in use and design to the left and right functions, the mid function returns characters from the middle of a text string. As with the left and right functions, the text argument is used to reference the cell with the text string in question or to enter a text string directly into the function surrounded by double quotation marks. The start number argument is unique to the mid function as it tells the function which character in the text string to start with. The number of characters argument then allows you to set the number of characters that you would like to return from the starting point that you set in the previous argument. Keep in mind that while the number of characters argument behaves the same as it does in the left and right functions, it's required in order for the mid function to operate correctly. Let's take a look at the possible examples of how the mid function would work with this text string. In this example, the text is contained within cell A1. The start number argument is set to 6, so the function starts 6 characters, including spaces, into the text string. The number of characters argument is set to 5, so the 5 characters from the starting position will be returned. This means that Smith would be the output for this formula. In this next example, the text is contained within cell A1. The start number function is set to 1, so the function starts at the beginning of the text string. The number of characters argument is set to 4, so the 4 characters after the starting position will be returned. This means that John would be the output for this formula. The len, short for length, function's sole purpose is to return the number of characters that appear within a text string. While there can be many uses for this function, it is typically used to check that text strings are of the correct length. For example, you could use this function to make sure that all of the text data within a row is under a specified length. The only argument in the text function is used to specify where the text data that you would like to count is stored. Suppose that A1 contains John Smith as a text string and B1 contains Jane Doe as a text string. Let's have a look at how the len function would work with this information in mind. In this example, the len function has the text argument set to A1. This means that a count of the text string within this cell will be returned. The output of this function would then be 10. In this next example, the len function has the text argument set to b1. This means that a count of the text string within this cell will be returned. The output of this function would then be 8. Now let's take a look at some more important text functions for trimming and changing the case of text values in data. The trim function is used to remove any empty spaces from text strings, excluding spaces between words. This function can be very useful in solving data compatibility issues. For example, a frequent problem in data entry is random spaces at the beginning or end of a text string. Such problems can greatly affect your ability to work with text-based data. Note that the only argument in this function text is used to specify where the text data that you would like to work with is stored. Suppose that A1 contains John Smith as a text string and B1 contains Jane as a text string. Let's have a look at possible examples of how the trim function would work. In this example, the trim function has the text argument set to A1. John Smith will be returned with all of the spaces at the beginning of this text string removed. In this second example, the trim function has the text argument set to B1. Jane will be returned with all of the spaces at the end of this text string removed. The upper, lower, and proper functions are used to change the case of the text in the data. The upper function converts all lowercase characters into uppercase, while the lower function will do the opposite. The proper function will only capitalize the first character of each word in a text string. For all of these functions, the only argument is text. This is used to indicate the text-based data that you would like this function to work with. Suppose that A1 contains John Smith as a text string and B1 contains Jane Smith as a text string. Let's examine some examples of how the upper, lower, and proper functions would work. In this example, the upper function converts all of the text within cell A1 to uppercase. In this example, the lower function converts all of the text within cell A1 to lowercase. In this example, the proper function ensures that only the first character in each word in cell B1 is capitalized. Let's take a look at two more specialized text functions for joining and transposing text to understand how they work and how they can be applied. The text join function allows you to combine or concatenate text strings together from multiple cells into a single cell. This function can save you an enormous amount of time if you need to combine data from multiple sources into one cell. The first argument, delimiter, allows you to specify what should be between the text strings when they've joined. This could be a space or another character or characters. When you are joining the contents of cells together, there is always the possibility that a cell might be empty. The second argument allows you to tell Excel what should happen in this case. There are only two possible entries here, true or false. If the word true is used, then text join will ignore any empty cells. This is the default setting. If you type false, Excel will include a space where the contents of the empty cell would have been. Finally, the text arguments allow you to define the text strings or range of strings that you want to join. Suppose that A1 contains John Smith as a text string, B1 is blank, and C1 contains Jane Doe as a text string. Let's look at some examples of how the text join functions would work. In this example, the text join function combines cell A1 with cell C1 and adds a comma and space between them, ignoring cell B1 because it is empty. Notice that the comma and space that we want Excel to put in as a delimiter is typed with double quotes around it. This is to tell Excel to reproduce this as a character. The output would be the two text values separated by a comma and a space. In the next example, the text join function combines cell A1 and C1 and adds a comma and a space, followed by another comma and space for cell B1 because the empty cell is not ignored this time. The output would be the two text values separated by a comma, a space, another comma, and another space. In this final example, because the delimiter argument is empty, the text join function combines cell A1 and C1, ignoring cell B1 because the ignore empty argument is true. The output would be the two text values joined without a delimiter. The transpose function shifts a vertical range of cells to a horizontal range or vice versa. To operate correctly, this function needs to be entered as an array formula in a range that has the same number of rows and columns. An array formula is different to a standard formula because it works with ranges or blocks of cells, not just with single cell references. Because of this, the keystrokes to confirm an array formula are slightly different, as you will see. For example, suppose that you wanted to transpose the values in column A so that they appear horizontally on row 1. To do this, first select the destination cells that you would like the results to be shown in. It is important that you leave these cells selected until you finish the function for the array formula to work correctly. Next, you would enter the transpose function into the formula bar with the original cell range as the argument. Press Ctrl, Shift and Enter to enter this function as an array formula, and the results will be displayed within the selected cells. You have had a chance to explore some commonly used text functions, their syntax and how they work. For a full list of functions, follow the link in the additional resources at the end of this lesson. Have you ever wondered what logical functions or logical operators are? Thomas at Westcal Publishing has been asked to use logical functions to check if the sales department met its weekly or quarterly goals, and if so, what the bonus would be for the team members. Thomas is aware that Excel contains a collection of logical functions that allow you to essentially ask yes or no questions related to your data. Such questions return a positive true or negative false response. Logical functions also allow you to perform calculations when certain conditions are met. Let's take a look at the logical functions that are available in Excel 365, including the AND, OR, and IF functions. Logical operators are used to compare two values against one another to see if they meet a specified logical condition. For example, should the values meet the logical condition 2 is greater than 1, then the output would be the logical value of true. If the values do not meet the logical condition 2 is less than 1, then the output would instead be false. Due to this behavior, logical operators are instrumental in constructing conditions for functions and calculations to run correctly. Excel provides 6 logical operators to compare numerical data stored in an Excel sheet. These logical operators are equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and not equal to. On screen, you can see a table with the logical operators that are available in Excel 365 and what they do. Let's take a closer look at the main logical functions and operators. The AND function returns a true value when all of the arguments are true. On the flip side, it returns a false value when any of the arguments in this function are false. For example, Thomas from Westcal Publishing could use this function to check whether the sales team have met all of their goals for the current quarter. While there can be a varied amount of use cases for this function, you would typically use it for conditional purposes. The first argument that is required in this function is logical 1. You can have up to 30 of these arguments in one AND function, with each argument separated by a comma. These arguments are where you enter the logical values and operators that you would like to test for, such as A1 is greater than B2. Additionally, you also have the option of entering a formula as a single argument. Let's take a look at some examples of how the AND function would work. Suppose that A1 contains the value of 15, while cell B1 holds the value 20, and C1 contains 25. While the value of A1 is less than the value of B1, B1 is actually less than C1. As not all of the arguments in the function are true, the AND function will output false. The value of A1 is less than B1, and similarly, the value of B1 is less than C1. As all of the arguments in this AND function have returned as true, the output for this function will be true. The value of D1 holds the logical value of false, so the output of this AND function would also be false. In this function, a simple equation has been added as an argument. As this equation is correct, the output from this AND function will be true. The OR function is similar to the AND function with one key difference. The OR function returns a true value if any of the arguments evaluate to true. With the same 30 arguments limit as the AND function, the OR function is constructed in the same manner and supports the same items. Typically, this function will be used to determine if there is a true value in a group of data. For example, Thomas could use it to quickly see if anyone in the sales department has made sales over a particular dollar amount in any one of the 4 months of this quarter. Suppose that A1 contains the value of 15, while cell B1 holds the value 20, and C1 contains 25. This OR function has 2 arguments and is checking whether either argument is true. A1 is less than B1 and C1 is less than B1. While the value of A1 is less than the value in B1, B1 is actually less than C1. Even though only one of the arguments in this function has returned as true, the OR function will still output true. In this second example, the OR function is checking whether the value of A1 is less than B1, and similarly, the value of B1 is less than C1. As all of the arguments in this OR function have returned as true, the output for this function will be true. In this third example, the OR function is checking whether the value in B1 is less than A1 or the value in C1 is less than B1. In this case, since none of the conditions have been met and they are all returning false, then the overall result of the OR formula would be false. The if function is one of the most commonly used logical functions. It sets a cell value based upon whether a logical test resolves to be true or false. For example, Thomas could use this function to test if a salesperson at Westcal Publishing exceeded a sales goal. If that resolves to true, then this function could output a bonus amount. If it resolves to false, then this function could output a zero amount. The if function has three arguments: logical test, value if true, and value if false. The logical test argument is where you create the condition that you would like to test. The value if true argument will be the output of this function if the condition is found to be true. Similarly, the value if false argument will be the output if the condition is found to be false. Keep in mind that the value arguments in this function can hold both text and numerical data. However, all text data must be enclosed in double quotation marks. Let's look at some examples of how the if function works. Suppose that A1 contains the value of 15, while cell B1 holds the value 20, and C1 contains 25. In this example, A1 is in fact less than B1, so this function would output yes. In the next example, A1 is less than B1, so this function would output the result of the value if true argument, which is 500 in this case. In the final example, A1 is less than B1, so this function results in no as the output. The ifs function is an evolution of the if function that was introduced in Excel 2016. It is an alternative to using nested if functions where you want to test multiple conditions and return multiple results based on those conditions. If you use the ifs function and then send your workbook to someone who has an incompatible previous version of Excel, the cell will show an error as the formula will not be understood. It is much easier to use and much easier to understand than a complex nested if function, and you should keep it in mind as you begin to use more complex logical analysis in your workbooks. The ifs function only has two required arguments, logical test 1 and value if true 1. Each argument is similar to those in the if function, but the benefits of the ifs function are realized when you begin to add additional arguments. The ifs function checks whether the first condition, logical test 1, is true, and if so, returns the value if true 1 argument. If the first condition is false, it moves to the next condition and performs the same analysis again, then continues through all of the logical tests. If none of the logical tests are true, the ifs function will return a not applicable value. You can prevent this outcome by making the last logical test in your ifs function true. Let's look at some examples of how the ifs function works. Suppose that A1 contains the value of 15, while cell B1 holds the value 20 and C1 contains 25. In this example, A1 is in fact less than B1, so the first logical test is false. In the second logical test, B1 is less than C1, therefore the function would output the contents of cell B1 20. In the next example, both of the logical tests are true. The function would output the string A1 because it returns the value if true of the first logical test that is true. In the final example, both the first and second logical tests resolve to false. The third logical test has been defined as true, so the function would output the contents of cell C1 25. You've had a chance to explore some commonly used logical functions, their syntax and how they work. For a full list of functions, follow the link in the additional resources at the end of this lesson. Over the course of these lessons, you've had a chance to work with formulas and functions in Excel. You learned that a formula is comprised of functions, arguments, calculations, and cell references. You explored different methods for constructing formulas and inserting functions in a worksheet. And you had the opportunity to start applying formulas and functions in a practical way. You learned about the difference between sorting and filtering and how both of these features can be applied to organize and arrange how data is displayed. You saw how sorting can be used to arrange data in a worksheet, for example in alphabetical, numerical, or date order. And how filtering can be used to refine the data in a worksheet so that only data within certain criteria is displayed. You explored what cell and range names are, why they're useful, and how to add range names to the data in your worksheet using the name box and the new name dialog box. And looked at how to edit and delete range names as well as how to use cell and range names in formulas. You discovered that Excel also has a wide range of specialized functions that can be used to perform complex operations on data for a variety of different purposes. You explored some of the specialized function categories, the syntax that defines them, and how they can be applied to manipulate and control data. You learned how to use text functions with various operations to manage, refine and extract text data, and looked at functions that enable you to trim, join and transpose text values in a worksheet, as well as change the case of text. Finally, you learned how to use logical functions that apply conditional logic to produce a true or false result, which can be used to analyze and organize data, and examined the main logical functions and, or, and if, and explored some examples of how they can be used with data. So there you have it. You're on your way to mastering functions in Excel. Great work. And there's so much more for you to learn about Excel.
Hi and welcome. Let's get started with Microsoft Excel. Imagine that you've been asked to analyze sales data from a large data set. You can use Microsoft Excel to focus on smaller sets of data and make your job easier. Excel is a powerful tool that can help you organize and visualize data. You will see that the more you use these Excel capabilities, the more easily you will perform your work. You'll explore a variety of features and get an opportunity to try them out for yourself. You'll cover how to work with data and how to better organize and visualize it. In this module, you will learn how to create and modify tables, use table references, manage large workbooks, visualize data with basic charts, and analyze data. These are some of the core skills that will help you work more efficiently in Microsoft Excel. Have you ever wanted to analyze smaller sets of data within a large workbook or break down large sets of data into smaller parts? If you have, you would probably find it handy to convert your data into tables. That's exactly the issue Thomas Bradshaw is facing now at Westcal Publishing. Thomas has been tasked with analysing some sales figures. Westcal has a large amount of sales data, but Thomas needs to focus on smaller sets of data. This context is ideal for using tables and making use of Excel's powerful organisational capabilities without modifying the data itself. Using tables will help Thomas analyse the sales figures he's been asked to. Let's see how we will be able to accomplish that task. With this scenario in mind, by the end of this lesson you should be able to identify the components of a table, create a table using the Create Table dialog box, use and apply table styles as well as quick styles, and customize row display. So let's jump right into it and explore tables to see how Thomas can work smarter with smaller sets of data by creating, formatting and modifying tables. A table is a specially designated range of information that has added functionality. If you need to analyze smaller sets of data within a large workbook or break down large sets of data into smaller parts, then converting your data into tables is often the best solution. When you work with tables, you can use Excel's powerful organizational capabilities without modifying the data itself. With tables, you can narrow down specific data and focus on only the important information. Let's now take a closer look at tables. You can create tables from existing data ranges or from empty ranges and then populate them afterwards. When you create a table in Excel, it will automatically be given a generic name such as Table 1 or Table 2, depending on the number of tables present in your workbook. But don't worry, you can change these names at any time. You should also note that tables are flexible in that you can convert your table back to a normal range at any point without affecting the contents. A table is made from adjacent columns of data with a unique label or heading for each column. Columns and rows may be added to a table just as you would when working with a normal range. Keep in mind that each worksheet has a lot more rows than columns. This design is well suited for data organized in long adjacent lists like columns. Now, to better understand tables, let's have a look at the components that come together to create a table. Now let's look at the table components. They make your table look more organized and easier to read. The table you just saw has some of its components selected. When you don't select any of the components, your table looks like a plain list of rows and columns. Let's start using some of the table components to see how different your table looks. First, let's look at the header row option. You can include a header row that displays the column headers or names for each column in your table by clicking the header row checkbox. For each header within the header row, you will see the header row drop-down arrow. You can use it to access filter and sort commands. Now, when you're working with a large table, it may be hard to visualize and understand your data. But if you click the banded rows checkbox, you can easily differentiate between each row that appears within your table. Let's suppose you want to display the results of calculations that are done on a column-by-column basis. To accomplish that, you can click the Total Row checkbox. When you select Total Row, it also includes the Total Row drop-down arrow. If you click the drop-down arrow, you can quickly access functions that can perform calculations on your table data. Finally, if you want to emphasize the first column, you can select the First Column checkbox. This option applies a bold effect to the first column of your table to differentiate it from other columns. And if you apply the Last Column option, it will do the same thing to the last column of data. Now that you've seen what the table components are, let's explore how to create a table. Perhaps the easiest way to create a table is to use the Create Table dialog box to convert existing ranges of data into a table. To access this dialog box, select the cell range that you would like to convert into a table and then click Insert Table. This will open the Create Table dialog box. You will see the selected range using absolute cell references in the text box, where is the data for your table. You can enter a different range into the provided field or select one with your mouse by clicking the Cell Selector button. If you click the My Table Has Headers checkbox, it indicates that the first row in the selected range contains column names. If your data does not have headers or column names, Excel inserts a header row and gives the columns generic names of column followed by a sequential number. When you click the OK button, Excel converts the selected cell range into a table. All right, we've covered how to create tables, which can help Thomas focus on smaller sets of data for his sales data project. But it would be nice if he could show that data in a more organized and professional manner. To accomplish that, let's explore how Thomas can format tables. Let's start with the Table Design Contextual tab and briefly explore the various groups, commands, and options that they contain. Let's start with the groups. They are Properties Group, the Tools Group, the External Table Data Group, the Table Style Options Group, and the Table Styles Group. Now let's explore each one of them. Whenever you're working with a table, the Table Design Contextual tab appears on the ribbon. Using the controls on this tab, you can modify just about any aspect of your table. In the Properties group, you can view and edit the current table's name. You should always name your table so that you will know what it is. One of the benefits of naming your table is that the table name is visible from anywhere in the workbook, so you can refer to it in formulas, for example. And keep in mind that rules for naming tables are the same as the rules for naming cells. You can also redefine the table size using the Resize Table command. Within the Tools group, you can remove duplicate values from your table using the Remove Duplicates command. You can use the Summarize with Pivot Table command to create a pivot table out of the current table. You will cover pivot tables in an upcoming lesson. And you can use the Convert to Range command to convert it back to a regular range. You can also insert a slicer into the table using the Insert Slicer command. A slicer is a graphic that you can add to the worksheet to filter the table data. It's a good effect for presentation of results to others and makes it easier for the others to refine the data in the table. You can use the commands in the External Table Data group to export table data to other applications, as well as manage data links to external resources. Similarly, you can use the checkbox controls in the Table Style Options group to toggle on or off available table components. Finally, you can use the gallery of styles displayed in the Table Styles group and apply them to the current table. Now that you have explored the Table Design Contextual tab, let's see how Thomas can format his table to show sales data in a more professional way. Similar to cell styles, table styles are pre-configured formatting options that can be applied to tables. With table styles, you can quickly apply a splash of color to your tables and in some cases enhance their readability. While you do have the option of configuring your own table style, you can also select from a variety of pre-configured quick styles. You can find all of these quick styles within the Table Styles group of the Table Design tab. If you click the More arrow within the Table Styles gallery, it expands it to show more options. When you click any style option inside the Table Styles gallery, it gets applied to the current table. Finally, to clear an applied style, you can click the More arrow within the Table Styles gallery and then click Clear. The table is then displayed with no style at all. You've just seen how to apply styles to tables so Thomas can present them in a more professional manner. Let's now look at how Thomas can customize row display. You can customize rows in a table through the enabling or disabling of banded rows and the inclusion of total rows. If you want to toggle banded rows, first select the table that you would like to work with and then click the Banded Rows checkbox in the Table Style Options group. Banded rows are enabled by default to make the data easier to read, but you can always choose to disable it. If you click the Total Row checkbox in the Table Style Options group, it inserts a total row at the bottom of the table. When the total row is shown, you will see that it appears bold and one or more of the columns will display a total. Now that you've learned how to create and format tables, you have access to many tools that will help Thomas to quickly organise and manage the sales data. Next, you will learn how to resize a table and how to quickly summarise your data. You will also learn how to clean your data by removing duplicates. After you create a table in Excel, there are many ways that you can easily add or remove table rows and columns. Let's see how you perform these actions. You can add rows at the bottom of the table by simply selecting any cell immediately below the table and start typing your data. When you're done, you can press Enter or Tab or select a cell outside of the table and Excel automatically expands the table to include the new row. The new row will include any formulas that are used in the table. Similarly, if you select a cell immediately to the right of a table and enter data, Excel automatically expands the table to include the new column. This functionality is called Table Auto Expansion. It is one of Excel's dynamic elements. For example, if you had created a chart based on the table, when new information is added, it means that the information will automatically appear in the chart. In most situations, this is a positive, but you can switch it off if you wish. You can control the table auto expansion behavior by clicking on the Control Autocorrect Options button that appears next to added row or column and selecting the appropriate option. If you select the Undo Table Auto Expansion, it removes the column or row from the table. But the data you entered remains and the Autocorrect Options button is still displayed, allowing you to select Redo Table Auto Expansion. Now, if you select the Control Autocorrect options, it launches the Autocorrect dialog box where, on the Auto Format as you type tab, you can set your preferences for automatically including new rows and columns in tables and automatically filling formulas in tables. And if you select Stop Automatically Expanding Tables after clicking the Autocorrect Options button, the Autocorrect Options button is no longer visible when you're working on your tables. To open the Autocorrect dialog box, just click File, then Options, and then select the Proofing category in the Excel Options dialog box and click Autocorrect Options. Now let's see how you can delete rows and columns. You can delete rows or columns by clicking Home, then Delete, then selecting either Delete Table Rows or Delete Table Columns. You can also adjust the size of your table by clicking Table Design, then Resize Table. This action opens the Resize Table dialog box, where you can define the new range of your table. Keep in mind that the headers must remain in the same row, and the resulting table range must overlap the original table range. Finally, you can add or remove rows and columns by right-clicking a cell in the table and selecting from the available options in the menu. You probably remember that we discussed earlier in the lesson that you can add a total row to your tables by clicking the Total Row checkbox in the Table Style Options group of the Table Design Contextual tab. Now we will explore some of the functions that are available in this row to help Thomas analyse and summarise Westcal sales data. When you select any cell in the total row, it displays the Total Row drop-down arrow, which provides function options for calculating the total for that particular column. You can select from all the Excel functions for total row calculations by selecting More Functions from the Total Row Cell drop-down menu. This opens the Insert Function dialog box. If you want, you can also count the number of salespeople in your table. However, you should note that the functions that you select are not necessarily the functions that are used to display the value. In this example, if we select cell E15, the sum of the weekly goal column, we will see in the formula bar that the function used is actually subtotal. Subtotal functions are used to perform calculations on only subsets of data within a range or table. In this case, it is particularly useful to display the table total values when filters are applied to the table. Now let's cover an example in which a filter has been applied to hide several of the sales representatives. In this case, the results in the total row only reflect the data that is visible after the filter is applied. However, if you prefer, you can manually enter functions in the total row cells. You can set the weekly goal column total to be a true sum function, showing the total for all rows, while the weekly sales column remains a subtotal function, only showing the total for the rows that are not hidden. Now that you have seen how the subtotal function is used in the total row, let's cover some more detail on its syntax and arguments. You use function_num argument to define other functions that you would like to use to calculate subtotals. Functions are called using numeric values of 1 to 11 when including hidden values, and 101 to 111 when excluding them. Hover over subtotal and mention that this function is put in automatically in a table because it works well with filters. It's also a function that you can use anywhere else in the worksheet. Hover over the number and mention that this decides the function used to generate the subtotal. For example, 2 is count and 9 is sum, but the screen tip help when you're typing the formula will give a list of these to choose from. Notice that if you choose 9 here, it will sum using only the visible data, but if you use 109, it will sum and include the hidden data. However, if the subtotal is used on a block of filtered data, it will also focus on the visible data regardless of which version you choose. Hover over the Ref1. This is where you indicate the cells, range, or column that you want to subtotal. If you're using subtotal in a table, the table column names will have to be enclosed in square brackets so that the formula knows it is working with the columns and not the individual cells. Each value calls a function in the function_num argument. For example, value 1 calls the average function, including hidden values in the calculation. In contrast, value 101 also calls the average function, but excluding hidden values in the calculation. We've provided a table that tells you which value calls which function in the function_num argument. It is available as a reading material right after this video. The reference arguments, ref1, ref2, etc., identify the ranges that you want to subtotal. Now let's think about this scenario. What if the sales figures that Westcal gave Thomas contains duplicate values? He should be able to identify and remove these values accurately. That's when another important Excel tool comes in: remove duplicates. It is true that duplicate values in data can be a common occurrence, especially in large data sets where data has originated from multiple sources, and they can be difficult to identify when dealing with many columns and rows. It is important, however, to identify and remove duplicates from your data to ensure accuracy and that your analyses are correct. While there are many strategies for identifying and removing duplicate data, Excel has a built-in function to remove duplicate values from tables or ranges that can be very effective. Let's look at how Thomas can use the Remove Duplicates function. Click anywhere inside of your table, then click Table, Design, Remove Duplicates. You can also access this function by clicking Data, then Remove Duplicates when working with ranges. These actions will display the Remove Duplicates dialog box. Now you can select the columns that contain the duplicates that you would like to remove. Please note that by default, all of the columns in the table will be selected. Make sure you use caution when selecting only some of the columns, as it may create a situation where you can unintentionally delete data that is not a duplicate. Sometimes you may have more than one instance of a value in the dataset, but only 2 of the rows are identical across all of the columns. You should be extra careful whenever you are removing duplicates and using only some of the columns to define them. After you select the columns, click OK in the Remove Duplicates dialog box. Any duplicate value that is found is then removed. An information box appears that informs you of the number of duplicate values found and how many unique values remain. You've learned that Thomas was able to focus on smaller sets of sales data at Westcal by creating, formatting and modifying tables. Now you'll see that Thomas can make his job even simpler by using table names and structured references. In our scenario, if Thomas gives his table a unique name that clearly describes the purpose or use of the table, he makes the structure of his workbook and the formulas he uses easier to understand. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to name a table, use structured references, use database functions, and convert a table back to a range. Let's start by exploring how you can name tables. You can name tables in several different ways. You will recall that you can apply names to cells and ranges to help you create workbooks that are easy to understand and work with. When you create a table, Excel automatically names it with a generic name like Table 1, Table 2, and so on, depending on how many existing tables you have in your workbook. The simplest way to name a table is to first click anywhere into the table, which causes the Table Design contextual ribbon to appear. On the left, you will see a name box and you can type the name you would like to assign to the table there. Keep in mind that the rules for naming a table are ones that you've come across before. The name must not be assigned to anything else in the workbook. You cannot include spaces, it must begin with text, but you can include letters and numbers, and it's not case sensitive. You can also open the Name Manager dialog box to edit your table name by clicking Formulas and then Name Manager. Then, in the Name Manager dialog box, you can select and edit your table name. In the Edit Name dialog box, you can edit the table name and also add comments that help you and other users understand the use of the table. You will notice, though, that the Refers to field is greyed out, because unlike a range, table size is dynamic, so it cannot be set using the Name Manager. You just learned how Thomas can make his workbooks easier to understand and work with by naming tables. Table names make formulas easier because the name is visible from anywhere in the workbook, but they need to be referred to in a particular way. Now you'll see how we can reference tables and their elements by creating structured references. You can use a structured reference, also known as a table reference, to reference tables and their elements using a combination of table and column names instead of cell addresses. This special syntax is used in tables because they are dynamic and normal cell references cannot adjust as tables are modified. Here are some benefits of structured references. You can easily create them by selecting the table elements you want to refer to. They update automatically when elements of the table are changed. You can use them inside and outside of the table, which can make your workbooks easier to understand. They take advantage of the autofill feature of autocorrect, filling the entire column of a table with a formula after entering it in just one cell. This is known as a calculated column. Let's say that there is an open column in your table that is used to calculate the dollar amount that a sales representative was over or under their weekly goal. You can calculate this column using structured references. Let's do that. First, select cell F5 and type the equal sign in the formula bar. Then click on cell D5 to automatically add the structured reference using the column name. In this case, open square bracket, at open square bracket again, then weekly sales, then close square bracket and close square bracket again. Now let's complete the formula by typing the minus sign, then click on cell E5. Again, note that Excel adds the structured reference using the column name. Now you press Enter to complete the formula. Not only do the formula results appear in cell F5, but it is also autofilled to all the cells in the over/under column. You can also use structured references in formulas outside of a table. You can have a field to show the number of sales representatives who have not reached their weekly goal. You could use normal cell references to create this formula, but if the table gets larger or changes, the formula may no longer refer to the correct cells. When you use structured references, you ensure that the calculation is always correct. Let's continue and create this structured reference outside of a formula. First, you select cell H5, then use the COUNTIF function by typing equal sign COUNTIF, then open parentheses, open double quotation mark. For the range argument, select the column with the values you want to count, if they match the criteria argument. In this case, you select the range D5 through D14. Because the formula is outside of the table, the reference contains not only the column name, weekly sales, but also the table name, sales, or sales, open square bracket again, weekly sales, close square bracket, and close square bracket again. To complete the formula, type a comma to move to the next argument, then type a less than symbol in parentheses, then an ampersand, then click on cell E5, and finally type a closing square bracket and press Ctrl-Shift-Enter. When you let Excel define the structured reference by selecting cells and ranges, it greatly simplifies the process of using these formulas. The syntax may seem complicated and can be confusing at first, but as you become more familiar with tables and structured references, you will come to understand them better and appreciate their value in complex workbooks. You've just seen that Thomas can make his work much simpler by using table names and structured references. Now let's see how he can use database functions to perform operations on a smaller set of data. Database functions are similar to subtotal functions in that you can use them to perform common operations on a specified subset of data. However, one difference is that unlike with the subtotal function, where the criteria is whether the data is hidden or not, with database functions you use criteria for the data in each column of your data set. The syntax of a typical database functions is =, dcount, open parentheses, database comma, field comma, criteria, close parentheses. Let's say that you've decided to use a database function to perform an operation on a subset of your data. Before you create your database function, you must first define the criteria you'll be using somewhere within your workbook, using column names that exactly match the column names of your database. You can have a range with all of the column names, but have only added criteria for the quantity and order price columns. For example, if you want to find out how many orders there are in the database where the quantity is less than 10 and the order price is greater than 200, you first select the cell where you want to enter the function. Now you need to define the database argument. To do that, select the full range or table of data. Or you can also use structured references. Just start typing your table name and the Excel autocomplete function suggests available table names. You can use the arrow keys to select your table and press Tab to apply it. To continue defining your table, type an open square bracket, then use the arrow keys to select #all. Press Tab to apply it and then type a closed square bracket. When you're using structured references, this action describes the entire contents of your table, including headings, data and total rows. After you've entered a comma to move to the next argument, you define the field argument by selecting the full column that contains the items you want to count. Or in the case of a table, you can click the table header and Excel inserts the structured reference in at the function. And here's a quick tip. When you are creating formulas, especially with structured references, try look for and use the screen tips that are displayed next to the elements of your formulas in the Formula Autocomplete menus. Now you define the final argument criteria by selecting the cells that contain all of the column names and related criteria. For example, you can select the range A1 through D2 and finally type a closed square bracket to complete the function and then press Enter. The function counts one order where the quantity is less than 10 and the order price is greater than 200. Now that you created the function, if you change the criteria in the criteria range, it changes the criteria for the function. For example, if you change the quantity to less than 50, it shows that there are 10 orders in the data set where the quantity is less than 50 and the order price is greater than 200. Because the function is built to include criteria for all of the columns, you can set the criteria any way you like. In this example, there are 7 orders with a unit price of less than 100 and an order price of greater than 200. We created a list with the available database functions that gives you the flexibility to perform many common operations on a specified subset of your data. It is available as a reading material right after this video. By now you have learned how to create tables and how to use them so that Thomas can accomplish his task more easily. Now you will learn how to convert a table back to a range. There may be times when you decide that using a table for your data is not the best option for your purposes. In these cases, it is simple to remove the table structure from your data. To convert your table to a range, first select any cell within the table. Then, click the table design and then convert to range. An information window appears asking you to confirm that you want to convert your table to a range. Click Yes. After you convert your table to a range, the table features such as the sort and filter arrows are no longer available for this data, but the table style formatting and the total row remain, and all structure references will be converted to cell references. In this lesson, you learned how to organize your worksheet data with tables. You can now create, format and modify tables. You can also use structured references as well as the subtotal and database functions. Taking advantage of all these tools will enable you to learn more about your data than ever before. You've learned that Thomas was able to create, format and modify tables to focus on smaller sets of data. Then he was able to use table names, structured references and database functions to make his job even simpler. Now you'll explore how Thomas can more easily navigate large workbooks so that he can find the sales data he needs to accomplish his task. Thomas was handed large workbooks, which can be hard to navigate to find the information he needs. This is a good scenario for Thomas to learn how to format worksheet tabs, manage worksheets and view worksheets and workbooks in different ways. With this scenario in mind, by the end of this lesson you will be able to format worksheet tabs, manage worksheets and manage the view of worksheets and workbooks. Let's start with our scenario. Thomas has large workbooks to work with to extract the sales data he wants to focus on, which can present unique challenges, especially with navigation. Let's explore how Thomas can format worksheet tabs and give them individual names and appearances. You will start by learning how to rename worksheet tabs. If you want to change the name of a worksheet tab, right-click on the tab you want to rename and then click Rename. Note that in a worksheet tab name, you can include text, numbers, spaces, capital letters, and up to a maximum of 31 characters. You can't include some symbols like /, backslash, question mark, asterisk, colon, open square bracket, and close square bracket. Also, you can't call a sheet history, as this word is reserved for internal use in Excel. Next, type the name you would like to give this tab and press Enter. The new name will be applied. To rename a worksheet even faster, you can also double-click the tab name. You can also change the color of a worksheet tab to make it even more identifiable. To do that, right-click the tab that you want to change and click Tab Color and select your preferred color. Note that the color is not obvious on the tab when you set it. It's designed to be vibrant and visible when you're not in that sheet. And here's a quick tip. You can change the color of multiple sheets at once by holding the Control key and clicking each tab to select them as a group first. You can also use the Select All Sheets command in the right-click menu to select all sheets in the workbook for modification. And you can also find both the tab color and rename commands on the Home tab under the Format drop-down menu. Now that you have learned how Thomas can name and format his worksheet tabs, let's explore how he can manage his worksheets. When you are working with large workbooks, you may find that you need to change the order of the worksheets, insert new ones, and delete others. You may also want to hide worksheets or refer to cells that appear on other worksheets. You will explore these topics now. In Excel, you can group worksheets together so that you can edit 2 or more at the same time. If you apply formatting to the group, it will then automatically be applied to any worksheets contained in your group. To group 2 or more worksheets together, hold down the Control key in your keyboard and then click on the tabs for each worksheet that you would like to include in the group. After you've selected all of the worksheets that you would like to include in the group, release the Control key. You will notice that each worksheet tab that you selected now has a white background. Note that the title bar will show the workbook name followed by the word group. You can remove worksheets from a group by holding down the Control key and clicking on the tabs for the worksheets that you would like to remove. And here are 2 tips that can be useful. You can select all worksheets at once by right-clicking any worksheet tab and clicking Select All Sheets. And you can also click the Ungroup Sheets command in the same location to ungroup all of the currently grouped sheets. Excel is very flexible in how you can move worksheets around in your workbook. You can even move worksheets from one workbook to another. The quickest way to reposition a worksheet within the same workbook is to click and drag on the Worksheet tab. A small page icon will appear under your mouse pointer and a black triangle will indicate the new position of the sheet. After you position your mouse, release your mouse button. The worksheet will be repositioned. Now, if you are moving a worksheet between workbooks, right-click on the tab for the worksheet that you would like to move and click Move or Copy. In the Move or Copy dialog box, you can choose the workbook to which you would like to move this worksheet, using the To Book menu, or you can choose the position of the sheet. Note that in order to move a worksheet to another workbook, you must have that workbook open. You should also note that the default setting is to move. You must tick the Copy checkbox if you want to copy from one workbook to another. You will notice that Excel is very flexible in that you can add or remove worksheets from your workbook at any time you want. You can insert a new worksheet by clicking the Insert Worksheet button, the one with the plus sign next to the worksheet tabs. Or you can click Home, then Insert, and then Insert Sheet. You can also find this command on the Context menu when you right-click an existing worksheet tab. Now, if you want to delete a worksheet, make sure that the worksheet you would like to delete is open, and then click Home, then Delete, and then Delete Sheet. Or you can right-click the tab for the worksheet and then click Delete. In either case, a warning dialog box will appear asking you to confirm that you want to delete the selected worksheet. Click Delete to complete the process. But be careful. If you delete a sheet with content in it, this action cannot be reversed by Undo. Now, if you are saving to a local drive, you could exit without saving perhaps, but if you are saving in the cloud, this would not be possible. And if the worksheet that you are deleting is blank, no warning dialog box will be displayed and the worksheet will be immediately deleted. If you are working with a workbook that includes a lot of worksheets, it can quickly become cluttered. To help alleviate this problem and allow you to focus on and quickly access the worksheets that matter, you can choose to hide selected worksheets. When you hide worksheets, they are not deleted and still operate normally, they are just hidden from view. But that is not a security feature. Anyone who can access the workbook can potentially unhide the sheets. Let's now see how you can hide a worksheet. To hide the currently active worksheet, click Home, then Format, then Hide and Unhide, and then Hide Sheet. Or you can right-click on the Worksheet tab that you would like to hide and click Hide. And after you hide the worksheet, it will be completely hidden from view and you will no longer be able to select its Worksheet tab. To unhide a worksheet, click Home, then Format, then Hide and Unhide, then Unhide Sheet. After you click Unhide Sheet, it will display the Unhide dialog box. This dialog box will list any worksheets that are currently hidden. Click to select the sheet that you would like to unhide and then click OK. The sheet that was hidden will now be visible and its tab will be displayed in its previous position. When you construct a formula, you can refer to any cell or cell range within any worksheet in the current workbook. These worksheet references declare the worksheet name followed by an exclamation mark followed by the regular cell reference. For example, you can have a formula that adds two numbers from different sheets. You just type the equal sign, sheet 3, exclamation mark, A1, the plus sign, sheet 4, exclamation mark, C4, and then press enter. In this lesson, you've learned how Thomas can name and format his worksheet tabs and how he can manage his worksheets. Now let's explore how he can manage the view of worksheets and workbooks. Thomas has a number of workbooks that he needs to open at the same time. He also needs to work with multiple worksheets. He can use some Excel features that may help him manage his windows and workbooks. This is what you will explore now. When you are working with large amounts of data, it is sometimes convenient to be able to keep an eye on one part of a spreadsheet, such as column headers or titles, while simultaneously viewing or scrolling through other parts of the same spreadsheet. You can do this using the Freeze feature. If you want to use Freeze, open a workbook window and click View, then Freeze Panes. All cells above and or to the left of the solid grey lines will remain visible when you scroll through your data. Cells to the right and or below will move with the scroll bars. First, let's look at the Freeze Panes option. If you select cells before clicking this option, everything to the left of and above the selection will remain frozen. Next, the Freeze Top Row option will keep the top row frozen. Since many top rows in a worksheet contain column headings, the column headings will remain visible while you scroll vertically through the data. Finally, the Freeze First column will keep the first column frozen. You can use this option to keep row headings visible while you scroll horizontally through the data. When you are finished using the Freeze Panes command, click Freeze Panes, then Unfreeze Panes. Now that you've learned about the Freeze option, let's explore the Split command. You can use the Split command to view 4 different areas of a worksheet at the same time. It is similar to the Freeze command, except that you have the option to scroll through all of the parts of the window that are frozen. Before you add a split, click the location in your data where you want the split to be added. For example, click the cell where you want to add a split. Next, click View, then Split. This command acts like a toggle. Click to activate or deactivate the split. After you click Split, you will see borders appear around the selected cell, dividing the worksheet into 4 parts. Each split operates in its own area. The top left, top right sides share the same vertical scroll bar. The bottom left, bottom right sides share the same vertical scroll bar. The top left, bottom left sides share the same horizontal scroll bar. The top right, bottom right sides share the same horizontal scroll bar. Note that the right, bottom right sides share the same horizontal scroll bar. If you want to remove the split, click the Split command again. And to move the split, click and drag the center of the divider wherever you like. Now let's explore the Switch Windows command. If you have multiple workbooks open at the same time, you can access them from the same Excel window. One method you can use to access open workbooks is to use the icons on the Windows taskbar to switch between the different files. When you hover your mouse over the Excel icon in the taskbar, it will display the open workbooks. You can then hover over any of the workbooks to display it on the screen and click to make it active. You can also click View, then switch windows to select from Open Workbooks. The file name with a check mark beside it is the one that is currently visible. Click an unchecked name to view that file. Finally, let's look at the New Window command. To view the current worksheet in another active workbook window, click View, then New Window. This command creates a new window of the active workbook. You can identify each window of the workbook by looking at the title bar. Each window will have a dash and a number to identify the version of the workbook. When you are finished working with multiple windows, simply click the Close button in the top right-hand corner of the Excel window to close each instance. When there is only one window remaining, the title bar will no longer show a dash and a version number. And here's an important note. When you create a new window of a workbook, it does not create a duplicate file, just a new window to look at the same file. Any change you make to the workbook in one of the windows will immediately be reflected in the others. In this lesson, you learned some of the various ways that you can manage large workbooks in Microsoft 365 Excel. You explored how to format worksheet tabs, group worksheets, manage worksheets, and view worksheets in different ways. You should now be able to work with larger workbooks in a much more efficient and effective manner. You might have noticed that you find it easier to understand something when someone has used patterns or colours and shapes to explain difficult concepts. Now you can use data visualization to help tell your reader a story. In this lesson, Excel will help you to turn numbers into visuals through the use of charts. You will learn how to create charts, modify and format charts, and add and format advanced chart elements. In this scenario, Thomas must interpret data for reporting purposes. To help him interpret this data, he needs to learn how to select and create charts in Excel. This will help him to save time and interpret the data quickly so that he can report the findings to his line manager. Let's help Thomas get started. A chart is a graphical representation of data and how the data relates to each other in a data set in Excel. There are many different chart types that you can choose from in Excel. Each of these charts are customized to display specific types of data. Making the right chart selection for your data will help you to communicate your data clearly and accurately. Let's take a look at an example. Here you have data that represents sales figures in various divisions of an organization. For this example, you can use a pie chart to graphically represent the sales figures in the spreadsheet. The pie chart shows that Division A generates the most sales, while Division D generates the least. Thomas wants to present his sales data using columns, but he isn't sure if this will work. To create a chart, the first step is to select your data across the set of cells in your worksheet. Remember to include the row or column header. Now, click the Insert tab. Here you will see that the chart section has a wide selection of charts that Thomas can use to visualize his data. Then, click on any one of the chart options in the Charts group to select your chart. Like Thomas, you may not be sure which type of chart to use. In this case, you can click on the Recommended Charts tab. The Insert Chart dialog box opens and you can scroll through the list of charts that Excel recommends for your data. Click on any chart to see how your data may look. The choice at the top of the list is the one that Excel considers to be the most suitable. You can also access recommended charts from the Insert Chart dialog box by clicking on the Option button in the Charts group. If you still don't see a chart that you like, you can click All Charts to see all available chart types. When you find the chart you like, double-click on it. Once you have inserted your chart, you can move it to any position on your worksheet. You can also change the size of the chart for a better fit. To move your chart, click to select the chart and drag it to the location that you want. If you are happy with the location of the chart, release your mouse button. Now, if you want to resize the overall size of your chart, click to select it, then click the Format tab. In the Size group, you can enter the exact height and width of the chart to resize it. To resize the chart manually, click the chart and then drag the sizing handles to the size that you want. Alternatively, you can resize your chart using the Format Chart Area task pane. To do this, click the Option button in the Size group. The Format Chart Area dialog box opens. Type the height and width of your chart in the boxes to change its size. After creating a chart, you might need to add additional data to the chart. First, click to select the chart. The data range now appears outlined and shaded in your worksheet. Now, click and drag the resize handles of the data outlines. This lets you choose which data you would like to include in the chart. If you want to include an additional line of information, click and drag the resize handle downwards. Division F is immediately included in your chart. Now that you have added additional information, you may want to switch between rows and columns so that your chart represents the data more accurately. Here your chart shows the stock keeping unit of SKU sales by month. The columns are grouped by the SKU number, and each column in the group represents a month in the quarter. You prefer to group the data by month and want each column to represent a SKU. So how can you change this? First, click the Chart Design tab and then click the Select Data option. Now click the Switch Row Column button to make the month the horizontal axis. Click the OK button. This applies the new changes and your chart's horizontal axis now shows the months. Now Thomas has a good idea on how to create charts that will provide the line managers with information that is easier to understand. Later, you'll have the opportunity to practice creating your own chart in Excel. Now that you've created a chart, you can modify and format it. When you want to modify a chart, you can add or remove certain chart elements or change your chart type. Formatting, on the other hand, means changing what your chart looks like. You can apply a variety of formatting techniques to change or add elements such as colours, layout or style. Excel also allows you to add chart elements such as chart titles, legends and data labels to make your chart easier to read. The number of chart elements in your chart depends on the chart type that you have chosen. In this example, there are 6 elements displayed on your chart. At the top of the chart, you find the chart's title. Next, you have the chart's grid lines. These are the grey lines running behind the columns. Then the data series representing all the data in the graph. On the right-hand side, you have the legend. This element explains the colours used in the chart. At the bottom of the chart is the data table. This element is optional and not automatically included in every chart type. The final element in this chart are the axis titles. Axis titles are typically available for all axes that can be displayed in a chart. Remember, elements will differ depending on the type of chart you have selected. If you want to change chart elements or the design of your chart, you can easily modify these in Excel. Click on your chart. The Chart Design Contextual tab becomes available. You can now change the design of your chart. In the Chart Layouts group, you can add or remove chart elements and change your chart's layout. You can also change colours and apply various chart styles. In the Data group, you can change the chart's dataset range and switch row and column data. If you want to change the chart type, select Change Chart Type in the Type group. And finally, if you want to move charts between worksheets in the current workbook, select Move Chart in the Location group. Now you can change the look of your chart by formatting it. Click on your chart to select it and then click on the Format Contextual tab. In the Format Contextual tab, you find the current selection control options. This allows you to select individual chart elements. Here you can access Format Selection. You can see that the dialog box opens on the right-hand side. When using complex charts, this is a good way to select items in a chart. Now select the Shape Styles option. Here you can change the shapes using the commands in the Shape Styles group. You can also modify the colour, outline and effects of the chart. If you want to change and format your chart's text, go to the Word Art Styles group and select an option. You can also change the order and orientation of the chart elements in the Arrange group. Finally, you can use the Size group to view and change the overall size of the chart that you have selected. As you've seen, there are a large number of choices on the contextual ribbons that allow you to change the look of your chart. But what if you don't have time and you simply need a quick way to make the chart look better and to stand out more? That is where chart styles are useful. They allow you to make your chart pop with only a couple of clicks. Let's see how this works. Select your chart on the Excel worksheet. Click the Chart Design Contextual tab. In the Chart Styles group, there is a gallery of different chart styles that you can choose from. Move your cursor over these chart styles and you will see a preview of how these styles look once they are applied to your chart. Click on any one of these options to change your chart style. Click on your chart again to select it. Now at the top right of the chart is the paintbrush icon. This is the Chart Styles button. Click this button to view the scrolling menu. It is the same menu of chart styles that you previewed earlier. You are now able to change the style of your chart very quickly and easily. You can also add or remove elements in a chart. To add a chart element, click the Add Chart Element command on the Design tab. Select the element you want from the drop-down menu. You can choose from chart titles, data labels, legends, and many more. If you want to access the chart elements quickly, click on the Chart Elements button in the top right-hand corner of your chart. You'll see the Chart Elements submenu. Select any one of the elements to modify your chart. You have explored various chart elements. Let's take a look at trend lines. A trend line is a straight or curved line element that can be added to your chart. It is typically used to show a trend over time. A trend line helps the reader to understand and interpret the flow of data in the data. It answers questions like, are our sales going up or down? Or how are the averages looking in comparison to the results each month? There are several different types of trend lines to choose from. Let's look at a couple of examples. Here is an example of an exponential trend line. This type of trend line is curved to show data rising or falling at constant rates. And this is an example of a linear trend line. This trend line is used to show simple linear data sets. It is a way to illustrate that something is increasing or decreasing over time. Let's add a trend line chart in your worksheet. Select your chart, then click on the Chart Element option. Now select the Trend Line option and then select the type of trend line from the options provided. Alternatively, you can use the Chart Elements icon in the top right-hand corner of your chart to add a trend line from the options provided. Once you've added a trend line to your chart, you can easily modify it. Click on your chart to select it. Next, click on the trend line to select it. The Format Trend Line task pane appears. Here you can use the various options to add to and modify your trend line. You can also use the contextual format ribbon to adjust the color of your trend line. Well done, you have completed this lesson. In this lesson, you learned how to select and create basic charts in Excel. You also learned how to modify and format your chart and added trend line elements. Later, you will learn more on analyzing data using pivot tables. See you soon. So far, you've learned that Thomas was able to create and modify tables, use table references, manage large workbooks, and visualize data with basic charts. In our scenario, we saw that Thomas was tasked with analysing some sales data. In this lesson, you will explore how Thomas can use one of the most powerful tools in Excel, pivot table. Pivot tables are extremely useful and interactive and can generate real insights into your data. If you've never used them before, they can seem a little daunting, but once you understand the basic principles, they are easy to construct. For this reason, it is important to know how they work and gain some understanding of their purpose before creating pivot tables of your own data. With this scenario in mind, by the end of this lesson, you will be able to create a pivot table, summarize data in a pivot table, format a pivot table, identify external data and power pivot functions, and use slicers to filter data. Let's go ahead and explore pivot tables. Pivot tables allow you to summarize or analyze large blocks of data and generate a table of results. You may be wondering why pivot tables are called pivot tables. Because they let you move data around easily by dragging and dropping fields to perform a sort of rotation on the structure of your table and at the same time change your view of the data. With pivot tables, columns can become rows and rows can become columns, all without altering the original data. When you create a pivot table, you are given the option to place it on the worksheet that you currently have open or on a new one. In either case, after you create your pivot table, you can pivot, repivot, sort and summarize your data without affecting it directly. You can choose the level of detail that you want to view depending on your needs. You also have access to all of the summary functions in Excel to complete your data analysis. For example, you can have a pivot table where the SKU or stock keeping unit in the first column, quantity and value columns, have been pivoted to appear as rows. A summary of each numerical column in the pivot table is displayed by default. Before you even create a pivot table, you need to think of the questions that you are trying to answer by using it. Just like when you are working with functions or formulas, half of the work in data analysis is finding the right questions. This process is especially important for pivot tables because how you construct them depends on the question that you are asking. Once you know the question that you would like the pivot table to answer, you can start constructing the pivot table. While there are no hard and fast rules to constructing a pivot table, there are some ways to make it easier. Here are a few tips to keep in mind when you're constructing your pivot table. First, it is usually best to create rows and columns using fields that have a relatively low set number of entries. Using entries that span a huge swathe of data, such as 5 years of transaction numbers, to create rows and columns can only cause confusion rather than answer any specific questions. Next, it is almost always a good idea to create a row out of a field that you need an answer from, and then create a column out of that criterion to narrow down the answer. For example, you can have a range that contains 34 rows of data about product SKUs or stock keeping units, their warehouse location, their quantities and their value. If you create a pivot table from this data set, it answers the question, what is the total value of the products stored in each warehouse? In this example, the warehouses are listed by row and the value or the criterion is listed as a column. A sum function automatically totals the value of each SKU stored by each warehouse. When you want to answer a question, you can change the function that is used by the pivot table. For example, suppose you want to see how many different products each warehouse has, not a total count. You could do this by adding the SKU field as a column and applying the count function. Let's now look at the Create Pivot Table dialog box. The first step to creating a pivot table is to open the Create Pivot Table dialog box by clicking Insert, then Pivot Table. You can use the controls in the Create Pivot Table dialog box to choose the data set or data source for the new pivot table that you are creating and where you want it to be placed. By default, new pivot tables are placed on new worksheets, but you do have the option of adding them to your existing worksheets in your workbook. After you select your options, click OK to create the pivot table. You'll notice that in the worksheet area, your cursor is now sitting in a placeholder. This is the area where the pivot table will appear, and it will flex to hold any number of rows or columns of results. Now that you've created your pivot table, let's look at the Pivot Table Field task pane. The Pivot Table Field task pane is the primary tool that you will use to configure pivot tables. Note that it is hidden when the pivot table is not selected. First, the top portion of this pane lists all of the fields from the dataset that you can add to the pivot table. To add or remove a field from the pivot table, toggle the corresponding checkbox. Or to give you more control over field placement on the pivot table, you can click and drag these fields to the pivot table itself. Note that field names are derived from the column header in the dataset. Next, the bottom half of this pane has 4 areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. If you drag fields between these areas, you can change the structure of the pivot table and choose the values that will be used to make calculations. Let's take a closer look at these 4 areas. Adding fields to the filters area will include those field values as filter criteria. The columns area will create columns out of unique field entries. Similarly, the rows area will create rows out of unique field entries. Finally, fields that are dragged to the values area will have calculations performed on them or their values summarized. Note that any fields that appear in these 4 areas will include a pull-down arrow that gives you access to a number of different settings, and the Field Settings dialog box, which you can use to further customize your pivot table. Remember that any changes that you make in the pivot table field task pane are applied dynamically. Now let's look at how you can summarize data in a pivot table. When you combine options from the Summarize Values By and the Show Values As tabs on the Value Field Settings dialog box, it provides further insight into your data. For example, suppose that you want to calculate the total unit price of all the products that each warehouse is storing. You can do this by dragging the unit price field to the Values area of the pivot table field task pane. Notice that it has already calculated an overall total, and this is now visible in the pivot table in the worksheet. But how is this result being calculated? If you click the drop-down arrow for this field and click the Field Settings option to open the Value Field Settings dialog box, you can see that sum is the default function. You can change how Excel is analyzing the data by selecting a different function such as average. Now, whatever heading is added to the rows box, the overall total will be broken down into a series of subtotals by that heading. Drag the warehouse heading into the rows box and the pivot table then displays the sum of the unit prices found in each warehouse. Pivot tables are an excellent tool to quickly summarize large amounts of data, but because they are dynamic, it may seem difficult to use the pivot table results in other parts of your workbook. Fortunately, Excel has a function to do just that. You can retrieve results from pivot tables in other parts of your workbook using the Get Pivot Data function. The syntax is get pivot data open parentheses, then the data field, the pivot table, and finally the fields and items. This syntax may seem complicated, but Excel simplifies the process of building the function by automatically inserting it. When you select a cell outside of the pivot table, even in another worksheet or workbook, and type the equal sign, then click on the field in the pivot table that contains the value you want to retrieve, Excel automatically inserts the Get Pivot Data function with the correct syntax. For example, if you select cell D2, typing equals, then clicking on cell B9, which contains the sum of the value of the SKU 1567, it will create the getPivotData function automatically. The value of this function is that it will return the correct value as long as it remains visible in the pivot table. Now that we have seen how to use the Summarize Values By tab or the Value Field Settings dialog box, let's use the same example and suppose that you want to see the percentage of the total inventory value that each warehouse holds. You could do this calculation manually, but it would be easier to change how the values are shown. Within the Show Values As tab of the Value Field Settings dialog box, you would click the Percentage of Grand Total option from the Show Values As drop-down menu. You will now see what percentage of the grand total each warehouse holds. In this case, you can see that warehouse A contains products with a larger value, while warehouse C has the lowest value. When you are working with pivot tables, you will see two contextual tabs. Let's focus on the Design tab. In the Design tab, you can add layout elements to your pivot table, customize style options, and apply a style in the same way that you would with a regular table. You can modify these options at any time. But what if your data is outside of Excel? For example, an Excel spreadsheet can only hold 1.5 million rows of data. What if you're working with population data and you have millions of rows of data? If the data that you would like to analyze exists outside of Excel, such as in a Microsoft Access database, you can still use pivot tables to summarize it. To do this, use an already established connection to that data by opening the Create Pivot Table dialog box and then clicking the Use an External Data Source radio button. Next, click the Choose Connection button. In the Existing Connections dialog box, you can choose from existing connections that exist and browse for more connections. Now let's look at Power Pivot. Power Pivot is an add-in that is available for Excel 365. It is additional software that is included with some editions of Excel 365, but by default, it is not enabled. When it is not included, it can be added later if required. After you install it, Power Pivot extends the functionality of Excel to allow for greater data analysis. What makes Power Pivot special is that it uses compression and processing algorithms that allow you to work efficiently with large amounts of data. This facilitates analysis with data that would otherwise be too cumbersome to work with. Power Pivot also facilitates the integration of data from multiple sources and has been designed with extra features and flexibility for environments that rely on Microsoft SharePoint and/or Microsoft SQL servers. So, does Power Pivot use the same functions that you are familiar with from working in Excel? Power Pivot draws data from multiple sources. Because it is analyzing information from 2 or more linked tables, it is what is known as a relational database. The Excel functions that you have seen in previous lessons are designed to work in the more limited environment of rows and columns in a workbook. Power Pivot creates its formulas and functions in a language called DAX, Data Analysis Expression, that can be used to work with relational data in a much more powerful manner. For example, this DAX expression joins 2 tables to return the total sales for the current quarter. You would use total QTD and the sum total of the employee's sales within a specific date range. You will find a brief summary of DAX categories of functions that you can access as a reading material after this video. You've learned that Thomas was able to use pivot tables to analyze data in Excel. Now let's see how he can use slicers to filter his data. You probably know that regular filters in Excel can be effective in obtaining more detail from your data, but probably also know that they can quickly become a chore to manage. Between having to clear existing filters before applying new ones and trying to determine which data is actively being filtered out, filters definitely have some downsides. To give you more control over filtering capabilities, Excel provides slicers. Slicers are easy-to-use filters that can be applied multiple times without negative effects on the data's readability. Slicers can be great help when working with pivot table data. While the main purpose of pivot tables is to help you analyze information and find patterns or trends that might be difficult to spot in a large volume of raw data, the slicer tool takes this idea to the next level. You can create slicers out of any field that exists within the dataset for the pivot table. You can then use these slicers to filter each field by its unique entries. For example, if you wanted to filter out data from one of the 3 warehouses in a worksheet that tracks inventory, a slicer would be able to do that for you easily. Slicers can also be linked to more than one pivot table. Situations like this usually occur when you are using raw transactional data as a data set and when you have multiple pivot tables for that data. Slicers are displayed graphically as a small pane that contains a series of buttons that represent each unique value from the field that the slicer is associated with. You can toggle between filtering and not filtering unique values from the field by simply clicking these buttons. Filters in a slicer that are not applied appear blue, while those that are white are active. If a filter button is grayed out, this indicates that an already active filter has removed the values represented by this filter from view. You can apply multiple filters that exist in the same slicer at once by holding down the Control key and clicking on each filter that you would like to apply. Now let's explore how you can insert slicers. Slicers are graphics that can be moved, resized like charts. They also have their own format ribbon, so it can be customized to different colors. To create a slicer, first click anywhere in the pivot table to display the Pivot Table Tools tabs. Next, click Insert, then Slicer. You can also click Table Design, then Insert Slicer to insert a slicer when working with tables. This action displays the Insert Slicers dialog box. This dialog box lists each field in the pivot table with a checkbox. You can create a slicer from a field by checking its associated checkbox. After you've finished choosing the fields that you would like to appear as filters, click OK to apply your settings. When you return to the worksheet, you will now see the slicers placed there. Over the course of these lessons, you explored how to better organize and visualize data in Excel by using tables. Tables allow you to focus on smaller sets of data without modifying the data itself. You learned how to create tables from ranges, format tables to show your data in a more organized and professional manner, and also modify tables by adding or removing table rows and columns. You also covered how to name tables and how to use structured references in a way that clearly describes the purpose and use of your table, and make the structure of your workbook and the formulas you use easier to understand. Then you saw how to use database functions to perform operations on smaller sets of data. Next, you learned how to manage large workbooks. You had a chance to try out a number of different commands, such as renaming worksheet tabs, changing their colors, hiding and unhiding worksheets, grouping, inserting and deleting worksheets. You also explored how to manage the view of worksheets. You saw how to use the freeze panes, split and switch windows, and create new window commands. You also explored how to visualize data using basic charts. You looked at how to create different types of charts and how to format and modify them. You also learned how to add a trend line to charts. Finally, you saw how to analyze data using pivot tables. You learned how to create a pivot table and how to summarize data in a pivot table. And you explored how to use slicers to more easily filter data. So there you have it. You are on your way to mastering how to organize and visualize data in Excel. Great work. And there is so much more for you to learn about Excel. One of the many great features of Excel is its advanced customization options. You can customize some of the visual elements of Excel, such as calculations, formulas, and how errors are handled. Just about every workbook that you create will contain a formula. Let's look at an example scenario containing formulas and errors. Grace at Westcal Publishers works with extremely large Excel documents that contain multiple formulas. Many cells are color-coded with green, and as a result she keeps missing the cell error indicator. This happens often, especially after a long day when her eyes are fatigued. Grace would like to change the color of the cell error indicator to a color that contrasts the green in her workbooks. Fortunately, Excel provides such a feature, and Grace is able to achieve this by using the Customizing Formula options. Using the Formulas category in the Excel Options dialog box, you can customize how these formulas behave as well as how errors are handled. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to customize formulas, customize proofing and saving options, and customize the ribbon and quick access toolbar. The Formulas category contains options to customize calculations, formulas, and how errors are handled. The options in this category are divided into 4 sections. Let's explore each briefly now. To access formula options, open Excel and choose File, Options, and then click on the Formulas tab in the Excel Options window. The first section is Calculation Options. Using the controls in this section, you can choose when calculations are made. Next is working with formulas. The controls within this section allow you to set the reference type for cells, use the formula autocomplete feature, enable table names, and use get pivot data functions for pivot table references. In error checking, the first option in this section is used to enable or disable background error checking. You can also change the color of the error indicator here. Finally, error checking rules. This section includes checkbox controls that you can use to choose exactly what kind of errors will be looked for by Excel. You should now have an understanding about how to edit the formulas category. In the next part, you will have an opportunity to put into practice what you just learned by completing an exercise on customizing formula options. There is no getting away from the fact that document errors occur daily. Whether they occur accidentally or unintentionally because of an oversight, there is always the chance that data can be corrupted. As a result, error checking is vital and is always part of a best practice process. Fortunately, you have some very powerful tools at your disposal when error checking in Excel. To ensure that Excel is looking for the right kind of errors, you need to ensure that the proofing category is correctly configured. Additionally, the Save category is used to control where your workbook will automatically be saved, as well as set other file options. Now you will take a quick overview of the many categories in the Excel Options dialog box. To access the options, choose File and then Options. The proofing category includes options to control what items the spell checker looks for and ignores. Additionally, you can find controls to change how autocorrect behaves. The Save category contains a number of different controls that can be used to choose how workbooks are saved, what format they are saved in, and their default file location. Additionally, this category also includes controls to handle auto-recover settings and offline editing options when working with non-local files. It's important to be careful when modifying these options. Some options will be set permanently, while others will be set for this workbook only. The auto-recover feature can be a lifesaver if you experience a computer malfunction or power loss while working on a file, as at regular intervals it will automatically save the file that you are working on. These intervals can be modified using the Save Auto-Recover Information Every Increment box. By default, this is set to 10 minutes, but it can be changed to shorter or longer intervals if you wish. You can also disable this feature entirely by unchecking the box, or disable the feature for just this workbook using the Auto Recover Exceptions For set of commands. In addition to the Auto Recover feature, Excel also has built-in version control. This protects your work if you accidentally close a file without saving it, as well as in a few other scenarios. For example, you can choose the default file location where versions are stored and toggle on or off this feature. It's important to note that Auto Recover is relevant if you're saving locally. If you're saving in the cloud, the save is automatic. If you're working on the desktop version of Excel but saving your workbooks in cloud, in OneDrive for example, then you can turn on the autosave button so every change is automatically saved. The more you work with Excel, the more you will find yourself using the same commands over and over. To help provide easier access to the tools you use most often, Excel allows you to customize the ribbon, as well as the Quick Access toolbar. During this lesson, you will learn how to customize both of these interface features. The Customize Ribbon category gives you controls to customize the tabs, groups, and commands on the ribbon. The left-hand list displays all the available tools, and you can filter these tools via the drop-down menu. The default view displays the most popular commands. Change this to all commands if you can't see the command you want. The list on the right contains the tools currently on the ribbon. It's important to note that some ribbons are full, so you cannot add them. If a ribbon does not have space for new commands, you'll need to create a new group to place the buttons in and then add the buttons to that group. Or you can create a brand new ribbon and put whatever you want on it. However, you will still need to divide the ribbon into groups. As well as creating your own tabs and groups, you can also import pre-customized ribbons as well as reset the ribbon back to its default state. You can also export your own customizations so that you can import them into other installations of Excel. It's important to note that the easiest way to open this category is to right-click a blank area of the ribbon and click Customize the ribbon. Similar in look and function to the Customize Ribbon category, the Quick Access Toolbar category allows you to pick and choose which controls appear on the Quick Access Toolbar. In addition to adding and removing commands, you can also import previously created Quick Access Toolbar customizations, as well as export your own. The advantage of Quick Access Toolbar is that it's always visible, so it's perfect for commands that you use all the time. Finally, you can also reset all Quick Access Toolbar settings. The easiest way to open this category is to click the Customize Quick Access Toolbar arrow and click More Commands. You can show the Quick Access Toolbar below the ribbon by selecting the checkbox. This checkbox positions it below the ribbon area so that it has the full width of the screen to display. You should now have an understanding about how to edit the Customize Ribbon category and the Quick Access Toolbar category. In the next part, you will have an opportunity to put into practice what you just learned by completing an exercise to customize the Quick Access Toolbar. Have you ever needed to display Excel data visually beyond using charts? In this lesson, you will learn how to use conditional formatting to visualize cells based on data value. While Excel workbooks and worksheets can contain all sorts of important and enlightening data, those important bits can sometimes be lost in a sea of information. To help bring attention to patterns or outliers in your data, Excel allows you to apply conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is often used to highlight interesting and relevant data, but it can go much further. During this lesson, you will learn how conditional formatting works in Excel, as well as how to apply it. First, let's look at an example scenario. Thomas has just been promoted at Westcal Publishing. Part of his new role involves working closely with the sales department. One of his primary responsibilities is improving data analysis and visualization for all sales representatives. He has been asked to find a way to colourfully display the sales results from representatives who are consistently hitting weekly targets. By using conditional formatting, he can have a colour generated automatically for those who are meeting their targets. He can then easily sort or filter by the colour. This type of data visualization will be valuable for his manager as he prepares his quarterly reports for HR and sales. At a glance, he wants to see who is performing and meeting sales targets quickly. Thomas's manager has also challenged him to provide different types of visualization analysis using colour and icons. To achieve this, Thomas can also use conditional formatting. Let's now take a closer look at how conditional formatting works in Excel and how to apply it. In this lesson, you will learn about conditional formatting, the conditional formats that are available in Excel, the Conditional Formatting Rules Manager dialog box, the New Formatting Rule dialog box, and the Clear Rules command. Conditional formatting is a feature that will automatically highlight cells whose data satisfies certain criteria. It is useful for worksheets that show financial figures, where black formatting might equal positive values, while red formatting might equal negative values. Test results, where results change colour based on their value, or any time you want to highlight the data that falls within a certain value. While Excel 365 includes some default criteria that you can use to apply conditional formatting quickly, you also have the option to create your own criteria and conditional formatting styles. There are a number of different conditional formats that you can quickly apply by clicking the Home tab and choosing Conditional Formatting. To see these in action, make sure that you have selected the cell range that you want to apply the formatting to first. Now let's explore the different format types that you can choose from. The first rule type is Highlight Cell Rules. This will highlight cells that are greater than, less than, between or equal to specified values. Next is Top-Bottom Rules. This option will allow you to highlight the top or bottom numbers or percentages in the selected cells. Data bars will display coloured bars that are indicative of the value in the cell. The more the cell is filled in, the higher its value compared to the other cells in the range. Up next is Colour Scales, which will use different shades of colour to represent different values from low to high. For example, cell D9 has the highest value represented as dark green, while cell D11 has the lowest value and is coloured dark red. Finally, icon sets will use sets of similar icons that will visually indicate a cell's value. You can apply multiple conditional formatting rules to a group of cells by simply reselecting the group and applying another condition. For example, you can add an icon set to data that already contains data bars. As you create and apply conditional formatting rules to your data, you will need to be able to manage them properly. The Conditional Formatting Rules Manager has been provided for just this purpose. It can be accessed by clicking the Home tab, Conditional Formatting, and then Manage Rules. Once again, make sure you have selected the relevant area of spreadsheet first before selecting the Manage Rules option. The Conditional Formatting Rules Manager will list any conditional formatting rules that have been applied to the current selection. It also includes buttons to edit, delete, and create conditional formatting rules. Let's now explore each of these features. The first feature is the Show Formatting Rules drop-down menu, which is used to choose the workbook element for which you want to display formatting rules. This can be the current selection of cells, the current worksheet, or specific worksheets in the current workbook. Next, you can then create, edit and delete rules. The New Rule button will open the New Formatting Rule dialog box, which can then be used to create a new conditional formatting rule. Likewise, the Edit Rule button will open the Edit Formatting Rule dialog box. This dialog is identical to the New Formatting Rule dialog box, with the only difference that you use it to edit existing conditional formatting rules. The Delete Rule button will delete the selected conditional formatting rule. The Move Up and Move Down buttons allow you to adjust the order of rule precedence. The topmost rule will be executed before the rules below it. Now let's look at the specific columns relating to a rule. The first is the Rule Applied in Order Shown column. This lists the name of all the conditional rules that have been applied to the current selection, or whichever element has been selected from the Show Formatting Rules For menu. Next, the Format column. This column shows you a preview of how the conditional formatting will look for each rule. The Applies To column will list the cell or range to which each rule has been applied. Finally, Stop If True checkbox. This checkbox is used to control what conditional formatting rules are applied from the list. For example, if you had 4 conditional formatting rules applied to a range of data, you could check the Stop If True checkbox for the second rule to prevent the remaining rules from being applied. Now that we've explored the Conditional Formatting Rules Manager, let's look at how you can create a new custom rule. To access this dialog box, click Home, Conditional Formatting, and then New Rule. It is important to note that before you add the rule, you must select the area of spreadsheet that rule is to be applied to first. The New Formatting Rule dialog box is divided into 2 sections. Select a rule type and edit the rule description. The Select a Rule Type section lists 6 rule types that you can choose from. Clicking on a rule type will change the contents of the Edit the Rule Description section to incorporate controls that are relevant to the selected rule. Let's explore each briefly now. Format all cells based on their values. This is the same rule type that is used in data bars, color scales and icon sets. It is used to illustrate your data in each cell relative to the range of cells that were selected, low, medium and high. Format only cells that contain. This rule is used to highlight cells that meet a specific condition. For example, you could use this rule to highlight cells that are lower than a specified value, or you could use this to look for specific text or even dates. Format only top or bottom ranked values. Using this rule, you can highlight a custom number or percentage of top or bottom values in a selected range of data. Format only values that are above or below average. This rule is used to highlight values that are above or below the average value of the cells in the selected range. Additionally, this rule also allows you to highlight data that is equal and above the average, equal and below the average, or based on standard deviations of 1, 2, or 3 above or below. Format only unique or duplicate values. This rule will highlight data that is either a duplicate of another value in the selected range or unique to it. Use a formula to determine which cells to format. This rule allows you to use a formula or function to highlight cells. For example, if number is less than 10% of value, color it red. Okay, you've explored how to create a new rule. The last thing you will need to know how to do is clear rules. To remove conditional formatting rules, click Home, Conditional Formatting, and then Clear Rules. Using the options on the submenu, you're able to remove conditional formatting rules from an entire worksheet, selected cells, the selected table, or the selected pivot table. However, you must be careful here to remember that rules may exist but may not currently be generating a color. If your colleague has set up a rule and the criteria is not being met at that moment, you may accidentally delete it by using this option. It's always safer to remove rules by selecting appropriate cells and then using the Rule Manager to delete them, because you can see what you are deleting. You have now explored conditional formatting and what you can do with it. Now it's time to put what you have learned into practice. In the next part, you'll have an opportunity to complete an exercise on conditional formatting. See you in the next lesson. Did you know that your workbooks can be customized in a number of different ways? In this lesson, you will focus on customization through the addition of customized workbooks and managing workbook properties. The information and analysis contained in Excel workbooks is often meant to be shared with and used by individuals other than the author. Making sure that the information is clear and easily understood by other users can often be challenging, especially when you are dealing with large amounts of data and often complex analysis. Fortunately, Excel 365 provides two ways to communicate additional information related to a specific cell in a spreadsheet, helping you collaborate and eliminating confusion. Comments allow for a threaded conversation about the data with multiple users, and notes allow for making annotations, which are typically used to add additional context to a cell. Thomas has been asked to collaborate on an Excel file at Westcal Publishing. He notices some inconsistencies in the cell format and wants to leave feedback. By using comments, Thomas can comment on a particular cell, which will open a discussion thread. All other collaborators can see this thread and take part in the discussion. Let's now take a closer look at comments and how you can use them to start a discussion thread in Excel. Let's start with comments. To add a comment, first select the cell to which you would like to add the comment. Next, click Review and New Comment. It's important to note that you can also use the Ctrl+Shift+F2 keyboard shortcut to insert a comment into a currently selected cell quickly. This action creates a new comment dialog box, and a violet command indicator appears in the upper right-hand corner of the currently selected cell. The new comment is labelled with the current user's name and the cell reference. To add text to the comment, type inside the provided text area, then press the post icon. Once you are finished, click anywhere outside of the comment dialog box to hide it. The violet comment indicator remains visible. Other users can now respond to the comment by hovering the cursor over the commented cell, selecting the reply field, then typing the comment. To send the reply, click the post button. The comment now contains the response, including the username and the date and the time of the reply. Clicking Review and then Show Comments opens the Comments task pane on the right side of the worksheet. It displays all of the comment threads in the worksheet. If a cell with a comment is selected, that comment is highlighted by a violet bar to the left of the comment. To close a conversation, hover over the commented cell, select More Actions, the three ellipses, then click Resolve Thread. Resolve is useful in a situation where you want both yourself and your colleagues to have a record of the comments and the replies on a timeline. Now the violet indicator and all of the comments in the thread are greyed. You still have the option to either reopen the thread or delete the thread. You can also delete a comment by clicking Review, then Delete, or click Delete Thread in the Comments task pane, or click the commented cell and select Delete Comment. If you were looking at a printed copy of your spreadsheet and you noticed something that you wanted to change or check, you would probably scribble a note on it. Well, you can do the same thing in Excel. A note is visible to anyone who has access to the spreadsheet. However, they can't immediately reply in the way that they can with comments. Let's look at how you would add these. To add a note to a cell, first select the cell, then click Review, Notes and New Note. A new note is now created and a red note indicator appears in the upper right-hand corner of the currently selected cell. The note is labelled with the current user's name. To complete the note, type the desired information, then click outside of the cell. The note is hidden, but the red note indicator remains. You can edit the note after it has been created by clicking on Notes and choosing Edit Note from the drop-down. You can also resize the note by using the drag handles on the corners of the edges. To show all notes on a worksheet, click Review, Notes and Show All Notes. All notes on the worksheet are displayed. Clicking this again hides all notes on that worksheet. And finally, you can convert all notes to comments by clicking Review, Notes and choosing Convert to Comments. You will receive a warning that converting notes to comments will remove any formatting or images within the notes. You may have seen printed documents with the words Draft or Confidential placed behind the text. This formatting uses a transparent image and is called a watermark. While Excel 365 does not include a direct way to create watermarks, there is a way that you can add them using word art. To do this, first insert word art by clicking Insert, Word Art and then your chosen word art style. Next, type the text for the watermark. With the word art selected, right-click and then click Format Shape. The Format Shape task pane opens to the right of the worksheet. In the Text, Fill and Text Outline category of the Text Options section, adjust the transparency slider. You can also rotate the word art shape by clicking and holding the rotation handle at the top of the shape. Holding Control while doing so will limit the adjustment to preset increments. The watermark is now ready and you can reposition it as needed. To add design elements to your workbooks, you have the option to add background pictures. These pictures appear entirely in the background of a worksheet without interfering with the contents of the cells. To insert a background picture, click Page Layout and then Background. This action displays the Insert Pictures dialog box. Using the options provided, you can insert a picture in many ways, such as pictures on your computer or a local network, pictures from a web search, your OneDrive storage, or even Facebook and Flickr if you were using a Microsoft account. Once you find and select a background picture, you can add it to the current worksheet. Note that if the image does not span the entire dimensions of the worksheet, it is tiled automatically. To remove a background image, click Page Layout and then Delete Background. Workbook properties are details that are stored within an Excel workbook to provide information about the workbook author, the creation and modification dates, and more. This type of information is referred to as metadata and can be useful in managing multiple workbooks, especially in an online or shared environment. Some of these fields can be amended, but some cannot. It's important to note that this information travels with the workbook, for example, if it is sent to a client or a customer. Let's examine the View Workbook Properties panel in a little more detail. You can view your workbook properties by clicking File, Info, Properties, and then Advanced Properties. When the Workbook Properties dialog box opens, you will see 5 tabs: General, Summary, Statistics, Contents, and Custom. The General tab contains basic information about your workbook and includes the file name, type, location, and size. It also displays file information such as date created, last modified, and last accessed. It's important to note that this information is updated automatically as the file changes. It cannot be edited manually. The Summary tab allows you to add information about the workbook to help you and other users understand the origin and purpose of the document. The fields available are title, subject, author, manager, company, category, keywords, comments, and hyperlink base. It's also worth noting that setting the hyperlink base allows you to define the default path to hyperlinks created in the workbook. Like the General tab, the Statistics tab displays the date the workbook was created, last modified, last accessed, and last printed. It may also display the last user to have saved the file, the revision number if available, and the total editing time. Like the General tab, this information is not editable. The Contents tab lists the worksheets contained in the workbook, including hidden worksheets. The Custom tab allows the user to add custom information about the workbook based on more than 25 available options. The information can be added as text, date, number, or yes and no. Any data stored under the Custom tab will only be viewable here and not anywhere else in the workbook. Using the Document Inspector. The Document Inspector is a tool you can use to examine your workbook easily. This includes personal or sensitive information that you may not want to include when sharing your workbook with other users. This information could include comments, document properties, personal information, hidden worksheets, hidden rows and columns, or external links. The Document Inspector also provides you with the ability to delete this information quickly. To access the Document Inspector, click File, Info, Check for Issues, and Inspect Document. Because the Document Inspector can remove data that cannot be restored later, you'll be encouraged to save your workbook before using it. This will allow you to restore to a previous version if you remove data that you did not intend. Click Yes to proceed. The Document Inspector will open and allow you to choose the elements the Document Inspector should check for. By default, all the content will be inspected. To proceed, click Inspect. Once the inspection is complete, the Document Inspector will display details on any data it has found, as well as the option to remove it. To remove the data, click the Remove All button beside the data category you wish to remove. If you have chosen to remove data, it is recommended that you click the Reinspect button to rerun the inspection and confirm that the data has been removed. You can also click the Close button to return to the workbook to investigate any identified data that you are unsure about. This can be hidden columns or rows before returning to the inspector to inspect your workbook once again. You have now explored enhancing workbooks and manage workbook properties. It's time to put what you have learned into practice. In the next part, you will have an opportunity to complete an exercise on managing workbook properties. While Microsoft Excel is an excellent tool for storing, analysing and presenting data, there will be occasions where your data needs to be delivered in a different format. There could be many different reasons for this. The audience for the data may not have access to Excel, or you may want to prevent other users from making changes to your worksheet. It could also be that there is a wide audience for the information in your workbook and it is more practical to use a different platform to share it. Because there are many reasons to export your data, Excel provides several options to support them. In this lesson, you will learn about Excel's export options and how to use them. In this lesson, you will learn how to export worksheet data and use data sources. Excel provides you with several file format options to export your data, each with its own purpose and characteristics. There are many other options to choose from, with the most common being CSV, PDF and TXT. CSV stands for comma separated values. This file format is used to store tabular data. Column data is separated by commas. All formatting is removed. Excel only saves the active worksheet. The PDF or portable document is a file format created by Adobe. This is used to create documents that maintain the format of the source, are highly accessible but allow only limited editing. Finally, TXT or tab delimited text. This is a simple file format used to store tabular data. Column data is separated by tabs. All formatting is removed. Excel only saves the active worksheet. For a complete detailed list of all available file formats, including XLS, XML and XPS, please refer to the additional reading at the end of this lesson. Now you will learn how to export worksheet data. Thomas at Westcal might need to send financial data created in Excel to a client in a format that they couldn't change, and he chooses PDF format. This is the first option, so we could click on this directly. But what if the customer said they wanted it in CSV format so that they could load it directly into their own system? Exporting data enables you to create your data set in a format compatible with its intended use outside of Excel. While we have reviewed the most common options in this lesson, other options are available and even subcategories for those options. To explore the different types of files you can create from your workbooks, click File and Export. The options in the export window are Create PDF/XPS document or Change File Type. Clicking the Create PDF/XPS document button will open the Publish as PDF or XPS dialog box. The following options are available. Name the file and select the file type and customize the available options. It's important to note that many computer systems are configured to print to PDF or XPS file types. Because the formatting of these documents is important, printing is recommended over exporting because it often allows previewing the result. Clicking the Change File Type button will show you the Change File Type category, where you can select from the many available file types and click the Save As button. The Save As dialog box will open, where you can select the destination of your file, name it and select a file type, this time from a more extensive list. Clicking the Save button will initiate the export of your data. Any alerts or errors are displayed. For example, the alert window cautions that the selected file type does not support workbooks that contain multiple sheets. The data that you analyse in Excel can come from many sources. How you access that data can have a big impact on the accuracy of your workbooks and your own productivity. During this lesson, you will learn about the tools available in Excel to help you access data quickly and efficiently. Let's start with data sources in Excel. Microsoft Excel provides you with powerful tools to analyse and present your data. It also contains the tools to access data from a wide array of sources. These tools ensure that the data in your workbooks can be as current and reliable as possible. The sources and how you access them vary from simple to highly complex and are closely related to the user's unique situation. The tools used to access external data are available in the Get and Transform Data group of the Data tab. Clicking on the Get Data drop-down command will show an array of available options. Hovering your cursor over each option in the list will display a sub-menu with more specific options for each group. For example, the options available in the From File sub-menu, or the various options available in the From Database sub-menu. An explanation of all these options and their requirements is beyond the scope of this course. However, being aware of their potential could lead you to explore using some of these tools in a unique situation. Next up is importing a delimited file. A delimited file is a simple file used to store tabular data, rows and columns. The column data is delimited, separated by a unique character, often a tab or a comma. The file does not contain formatting. Because the structure of these files is simple and predictable, they are very popular for transferring data between programs. With some delimited files, such as the CSV format, you can open them directly in Excel using the File and Open command. Excel will make assumptions about what type of data is in each column and the separator character. In most cases, this will produce the desired result. However, there may be times that you need to define some of the file's data characteristics, or you want the convenience of loading the data into an existing workbook. In these cases, you can import the data. To begin the import process, click Data, then from Text/CSV. The Import Data dialog box will open, where you can navigate to and select the file you wish to import. Click the Import button to start the process. The Get and Transform Data dialog box will appear, giving a preview of the data in the file. You can click to select the file origin, delimiter and data type detection options from the respective drop-down lists. Any changes made in these drop-down lists will be previewed in the data list. To create a new worksheet in the workbook and load the data as a table on that sheet, you will click the Load button. To select the destination of the data, you would click the Load drop-down arrow, then click Load to. The Import Data dialog box will open, allowing you to select how you want to view the data in your workbook and where you want to put it. Clicking the OK button will load the data. You would then see the data loaded as a table on your worksheet. The Queries and Connections task pane will appear on the right of the window. Under the Queries tab, you will see that the imported data source is displayed and indicates the number of rows loaded. Hovering your mouse over the query will display a query dialog box showing a preview of the data and information on its content, status and source. To launch the Power Query Editor, a comprehensive tool that helps you customize your queries, click Edit. The Power Query Editor will appear with a wide array of tools available to manage how the data from your source file appears in your workbook. To close the editor, click the Close X button. Maintaining the query will keep a link to the original data. The query could be set to refresh the data in your workbook automatically. If you are happy with the data and do not want to maintain a query to the source file, you can click Convert to Range in the Tools group of the Table Design tab. An alert window appears warning that the query definition will be permanently removed. To continue, click OK. Notice that the data has converted to a normal range. The Table Design Contextual tab has disappeared. The Queries and Connections task pane indicates that the data source is a connection only. A connection is like a pointer to the data source that can be used but does not allow for updates. Finally, let's look at using a web query. The internet can be a great source of useful information for your Excel projects. Using web queries can provide you with a quick and efficient method of loading that information into your workbooks and keeping it current. To create a web query, click the From Web option from the Data tab. The From Web dialog box will open where you can enter a URL address pointing to a web page that contains a data table you would like to access. You would enter the address in the URL dialog box and click OK. The Access Web Content dialog box will open, where you can define the type of access to use to access the web content. This allows you to use different types of credentials when accessing secure content. Once you've selected the appropriate type and entered the correct credentials, click Connect. The Navigator dialog box will appear, displaying a list of any available tables in the left-hand list box. Selecting a table will display the table data in the Table View list box. Once you've located the data you wish to load to your workbook, click the Load or Load To button. It's important to note that websites can be very complex. Not all data you might find on the web will be in an appropriate format to allow for queries. Trial and error will likely be required. As with importing a delimited file, Excel will create a new worksheet and load the data as a table. The Queries and Connections task pane will appear on the right of the window, listing the query in the Queries tab and indicating the number of rows loaded. Hovering your mouse over the query will display a dialog box named after the query, showing a preview of the data, information on its contents, status and source. To make adjustments to the query, launch the Power Query Editor by clicking Edit. The Power Query Editor will open. Some of the many options here allow you to add or remove columns, filter rows, apply logic, or adjust the data type of the columns. If you've made any changes to your query, click the Close and Load command in the Close group of the Home tab to save and apply the changes. To refresh or update your query, select a cell in the query table in the workbook. Click the Refresh drop-down arrow in the Queries and Connections group of the Data tab. Then click Refresh All. In this lesson, you learned about exporting and sourcing data. Now it's time to put what you've learned into practice. In the next part, you will have an opportunity to complete an exercise on using data sources. Congratulations on completing this module. In this module, you learned about some of Excel's advanced features, such as how to customize the Excel environment and how to apply conditional formatting. You also learned how to enhance workbooks and manage workbook properties, export data, and work with data sources. Throughout this module, you had an opportunity to complete practical exercises. For example, you customized the Quick Access toolbar and applied conditional formatting to an Excel workbook. Up next, you will have an opportunity to recap over the key points and lessons in this module. In the next module, you'll have an opportunity to complete the Honours Hands-on Practice using Microsoft Excel. See you in the next lesson. If you have completed the previous modules, you should now be comfortable with creating a new spreadsheet, working with basic formulas and functions, making a spreadsheet look professional and presentable, and saving and printing a spreadsheet. You've also taken your first steps in data analysis by learning how to work with pivot tables. Let's recap over the key topics and concepts covered. First, you learned how to create, modify, and print workbook contents. Next, you learned how to work with functions. You created formulas and applied functions to sort and filter data. You also applied a range and used specialized functions such as text functions and logical functions. Then you learned about organizing and visualizing data, and you explored functionality to create, format, and modify tables. You also learned how to insert table references, manage large workbooks, create, modify, and format charts, and create advanced charts. You also learned about data analysis and took the first step by creating pivot tables. Finally, you explored some of Excel's advanced features, such as how to customize the Excel environment and how to apply conditional formatting. You also learned how to enhance workbooks and manage workbook properties, export data, and work with data sources. Congratulations on completing this course. You should now be comfortable creating advanced formulas, analysing data with functions, analysing data using functions and pivot tables, working with tables, visualising data with charts, working with graphical objects, and enhancing workbooks. Now you have an opportunity to complete the Honours Hands-on Practice using Microsoft Excel. In this programme, you can also explore Word and PowerPoint. Why not give that a try? Good luck and see you in the next course. Congratulations! You've reached the end of the Microsoft Excel Fundamentals course. You are now ready to complete the Honours Hands-on Practice using Microsoft Excel. This is an optional honours assignment you can complete for special recognition in the course. It is not required to complete this assignment to get a course certificate, but if you complete all honours assignments in a course, your course certificate will include a special honours recognition. If you don't get a course certificate, your accomplishments page will show that you completed a course with honours. By working through the lessons in this course, you have learned the necessary skills and techniques to work efficiently with spreadsheets in Excel. This assignment will give you the opportunity to demonstrate all of the spreadsheet skills that you've developed and apply them in a practical way by analysing and presenting data in Microsoft Excel. The project consists of 2 tasks. For your first task, you will work with a workbook that lists the total sales for every branch of Westcal Publishing. You have been asked to analyse the data and prepare to present it to senior management using Excel. This task will give you a chance to bring together some of the skills you have learned in Excel that might be useful to progress your career. You can demonstrate that you are confident working with formulas and functions and modifying worksheets. You can show that you are comfortable printing workbook contents and managing workbooks. Finally, you can show your range of skills by analysing data using functions and visualising data with charts. These are all skills that you have used before in this course, but this time you will apply them all to a single document. In your second task, you need to review a spreadsheet submitted by a colleague. As a reviewer, you will provide constructive feedback and comments on the spreadsheet. The focus of your feedback is on how the data was analysed and prepared for presentation to senior management using Excel. You will get detailed guidance on how to do this and what to look out for. And that's it. Once you have completed the tasks in this project, you will have successfully concluded the course Working Smarter with Microsoft Excel. Well done. That's a considerable achievement. Happy spreadsheeting and good luck with your assignment.